Newlab at Michigan Central is where innovation is thriving and where Detroit's future is taking shape. In just 1 year, we have 93 startups that are leveraging the resources like this prototyping shop to build their solutions. That's a 272% increase since April of 2023. Michigan Central is putting Detroit at the forefront of innovation in mobility, clean energy, and materials, with the creation of solutions and the advancement of the underlying technologies. We take tremendous pride in creating an inclusive environment. More than half of our startups are either women-owned or have Black or Latinx founders. Through our partnership with the state of Michigan and the city of Detroit, Michigan Central is able to offer programs like our Founder Fellowship, which is offering entrepreneurial opportunities for underrepresented founders. The startups at Newlab at Michigan Central have raised a combined of $616 million in 1 year. That really puts Detroit on the global innovation stage. This is Newlab, the center of deep tech innovation at Michigan Central.
Morning, everyone. How's everyone doing this morning? Yeah. How many of you guys were at the concert or watched the concert last night? Woo! It was wasn't it? Yeah, it was so much fun. I'm glad you guys all got to be there. It was magnificent. But today's, I guess, to me, where the fun starts. Because today is we are kicking off our open forum, which is our thought leadership platform. It's designed to bring together all of the different stakeholders that are in the room today to really have the deep conversations, to really think about all of the, collect insights, work together, and figure out how we can drive the industry, how we all work together to actually advance those technologies. And so this is the vision of Michigan Central. This is what Bill Ford was talking about when he was like, this has got to be the place where we come together to help Michigan win. And so today is where it all starts. We have an amazing lineup around innovation and equitable innovation, as well as with deep AI conversations. And we want to have you guys engaged. There's going to be moments where we're going to ask you to really tell us what you're thinking about. And there will be opportunities to ask questions to some of this all-star lineup. So today it's jam-packed. There are no breaks, so please take breaks when you need them. Head out to grab some food. There'll be snacks for all day because we all know we're a little bit funky today. I had to wear a bright color to actually wake up this morning. And really, we're looking forward to starting this with you guys and moving forward together as we continue to progress in the industries. So thank you, and really enjoy the conversation today. Let's get started.
Air is essential. Every human being takes on average 20,000 breaths per day. That air is a huge factor in the outcomes of your health. We want to make sure that every one of those 20,000 breaths we take is a good one. Just Air is really a community insights platform where we use data to protect our communities from the harmful effects of air pollution. You take a monitor measuring a certain pollutant, and then the dashboard takes the data from that monitor, displays it to a user. And using our computer vision and machine learning tactics, we want to make sure that we can drill down and understand, one, where the sources of pollution coming from, and two, what are some solutions that we can bring about to actually mitigate that. One thing that I'm very passionate about is using our technology as an infrastructure to have data that can cause transformational change. For example, we're partnering with Wayne County and deploying 500 mobile monitors along with 100 stationary monitors. And so what this project entails is recruiting 500 youth that are at risk with asthma, so who may have a rescue inhaler. We connect the Bluetooth dot on that rescue inhaler, and then the other device will be a mobile monitor where they can clip on their backpack. This monitor would track the pollutants that are around them. And with those two devices, we can then really measure, hey, when Timmy uses an inhaler, here are the VOCs, here's the particulate, here is the location, their area. So we can then say, hey, this community of youth are suffering because of X, Y, and Z around them. And so this 3-year-long project, is really to show an example of what real data and real community partnership with the authority of a governing body like Wayne County can really do. Lab in Michigan Central. It's really a space to create, space to build community. I walk in the doors and I feel comfortable. I can let my guard down. I'm excited that I get to wake up every morning and solve a problem that I'm passionate about to make sure that no matter where you are, where you're born, you have equal access to clean air.
Good morning. Can you hear me? No? Oh, my mic is on. Good morning. Thank you. My name is Tiffany Moore. I am at the Consumer Technology Association. It is not. It is. So it's not on. That's good. Hello. Good morning. As I mentioned, my name is Tiffany Moore. I am the Senior Vice President of Political and Industry Affairs at the Consumer Technology Association, which is the largest tech trade association, and most people know us because we own and produce a small show called CES. I am really happy to be here. Probably most important to this conversation is that I was born and raised in Detroit, and so the ability to come back to the city is incredibly special to me, and to see our focus on building Detroit's entrepreneurial ecosystem is equally exciting. And we couldn't have a better panel of individuals to help us have this conversation. So I'd like to start by introducing our panelists who are doing incredible things in the city of Detroit, but also making sure that those investments and that support permeate not just downtown, but through our neighborhoods, including the west side where I'm from. Whether they've been drawn to Detroit or from Detroit, again, what they're doing is incredibly special, it's unique, it's powerful, and it is reverberating across the country. Our first panelist is Peter Scher. He is Vice Chairman of JPMorgan Chase. He's led the first, yes, come on up. Definitely worthy of applause. So I will brag on Peter and JPMorgan, a $200 million economic investment revitalization here in the city of Detroit. This work has been featured on 60 Minutes across the country and changing the world. It's also a course at a case at Harvard Business School. Next, we have Sophia Bush, probably on One Tree Hill and many shows, but she's equally an activist, entrepreneur, and philanthropist. And central to this conversation, she is the general partner and investor in Union Heritage Ventures. She's no stranger to Detroit, and she was first introduced to the city by her best friend, Nia Batts, who's our next panelist who will be joining us.
Who's on the phone?
Nia is getting work done right now. Nia is a native Detroiter, and she's managing director and COO of Union Heritage, one of the nation's leading minority-owned diversified investment management companies. She's also launched the venture arm, Union Heritage Ventures, the only majority African-American owned and majority women-owned venture capital firm in our great state of Michigan. So please help me welcome our panelists. Have a seat. Good morning. Everybody, mics work? I mean,
Hello.
so.
Hello.
well, I'm the only person, obviously, who's having some challenges this morning. But I love this conversation. I love being here. Immediately when I was asked to come, I said, oh, yes. So I talked a little bit about each of your kind of backgrounds, but I want you all to give a better and fuller snapshot to this audience, particularly about how Detroit is important. Just a little snapshot, and we'll talk a little bit and dive deeper. But Peter, I'll start with you. Obviously, the investment, incredible investment that you're leading here in Detroit. Tell us a little bit about that.
So we've been part of Detroit for 80 years, but really it was almost 11 years ago, summer of 2013 at the height of the bankruptcy when our chairman, Jamie Dimon, asked me to come out and see if there's anything we can do to help. And we just saw we saw the problems. I mean, we know it was, 23% unemployment, the city had just entered bankruptcy, there were no buses running on time. I mean, we saw all the problems, but we also saw enormous opportunity. We saw a community that had come together And, over the course of 6 months, we were a lot of people, and we made a decision to invest because we thought this was, not because simply it was the right thing to do, but we thought it was a smart thing to do. That if we could create a model here for how you actually bring a city back, it would be good for business, and it has proved to be the case. So, and I'm sure we'll talk more about that.
Yes. Sophia?
Well, I'm very lucky. I claim Detroit as my home away from home because my mic is not working. Oh. If I do this, is it better?
Yes.
I just need to get it closer to my face. You'd think from my day job I'd be better at that part. But all right, we'll just swap all together. I got lucky, coming out here and getting to know the city with Mia, and our friendship really was rooted in activism from the start. We met at a conference before conferences were like this. They weren't cool almost 20 years ago. But we liked to go and take copious notes. And I think for me, falling in love with this city as a friend, coming to visit and spending so much time with Mia's family, watching her younger siblings grow up, has been so exciting for me. And knowing the sort of great stories of America, the American dream, the idea of what you can do here. My dad is an immigrant. My mom's mom was an immigrant. I grew up in Los Angeles, but I've been lucky enough to work all over the country and to see what investing in local economies can do, whether it is, bringing television production or coming in under the umbrella of finance, is incredibly inspiring and exciting to me. I think it's how we build a modern and robust America today. And yeah, I love it here. I'm real long on Michigan.
We love it. And Nia, of course, you are a native Detroiter. Talk a little bit just about your vantage point. Having seen Detroit over the years, and now to reach this point where you're able to invest so much into the city.
Yeah, I love mine too.
Yep.
Okay. Good? Yeah. Yes, I was born and raised in Detroit. I love Detroit. And I did also what you're supposed to do as sort of the quote-unquote boomerang. It's you go and you might leave, but you're always supposed to kind of return and come back. And I remember maybe around 2010, 2012, and I was living and working in New York, working in entertainment, but ad-supported cable, and you have the big three here. And so I was spending a lot of time back here in Michigan and in Detroit. And I started to see friends that were here, friends that were coming back, and they were just building businesses very quickly. You'd have an idea, and it was a coffee shop. It was a consulting business. And I was so incredibly drawn to that. And that was really the genesis of kind of the first business that we had here in Detroit, which was we decided to create a business that was a solution to a problem that we have. And then we built it. And that is the kind of energy, that kind of maker culture that's always been here. And it's so interesting now in this moment when we have these conversations about what does the future of innovation look like. We've always been an incredibly innovative, maker-driven city and community. And now we just have an opportunity to invest and think about new ways that we can contribute to that conversation.
Excellent. And so uniquely, this panel is called Inclusive Investing and not Impact Investing. And we had such a great conversation about the difference in making sure, particularly impact investing, there's kind of a belief around it, but always be clear, you invest to make money. So wherever we're doing, that is the goal, but it's about how we go about doing it. So I would just love to kind of entertain, Peter, you raised the point, this is inclusive investing and the difference. Why is that so significant?
Well, I think I guess mine's the only one that works. I don't know what that's all about. Let me take this one off. So now this one doesn't work? No, okay.
Good. Morning
I don't
panel.
do this for a living. I think, and I'll talk about this from the perspective of a big company. There's a lot of resources, and I think part of the challenges in corporate America for so long is we thought about this. We'll have an office of philanthropy, and we'll have an office of impact investing, and they'll go sprinkle a little money around, and we'll do some press releases, and we'll put a little shine on the fact that the rest of our businesses don't really operate in a way that brings more people into the economy and creates more opportunity. And I think the difference is that we had a great chat about the other day is this has to be a fundamental part of our business strategy, not a separate thing that is disconnected. And that's how we thought about our investment in Detroit. Not, when we announced this in 2014, the first thing we said, this is not charity. This is about making an investment in a city that we are betting can come back and eventually will lead to business growth. And I think that has, for us, Detroit has transformed how we think about all of these things and how we think about the systems in place, particularly when you talk about finance. There is systemic racism within, historically, and we have to look at how do you actually not have a separate office so you can say we did good things, but it didn't really change the systems, but how do you actually change the underlying systems so capital can get to the people who want to create opportunities and do what we see being done in Detroit every day. So that's why we make a very big distinction that this is very much part of our business strategy, and getting more people into the economy, so a more inclusive economy, is a very important part of our business strategy.
And Sophia, I see you nodding.
It just makes me so happy because you are like the antithesis of the pale male and stale stereotype, so thank you. It matters because we know, and I was so refreshed, as you said, when we had that conversation the other day. For some reason, when 3 of 4 of us walk in a room to talk about finance because we're women or women of color, people are like, oh, you're an impact thing. And it's like, why might you say that to us and not to Peter? That's so interesting. And it's really refreshing. It's like, we can't just be screaming into the void about how we're 51% of the population and thus should be also the economy. But we need you guys to help us do it. And I think people forget, that a woman couldn't go into a bank and get a business loan without a male cosigner until 1988. People forget how much of a systemic shift is required to allow us all to participate. But what we see over and over again is that diverse managers outperform other managers, is that companies that have, let's say, a C-suite that looks like the 4 of us are going to have better return on investments than companies with homogenous C-suites. And so, to your point, it is not just a moral imperative that we make room for women and for communities of color and for historically under-resourced geographies and sectors, but you're going to make more money. Everybody's going to make more money. So you can be a good person and do well at the same time. It should be a no-brainer, but, we need more guys like you helping us do it.
Yeah, I think we operate with a base level assumption that, with capital as power, and you should be making investment decisions that are going to drive impact regardless. And so that is a metric that we utilize and evaluate and track, but that doesn't drive our strategy. It's endemic to our strategy, I guess, in some respects. And, you often bring this up. What happens often with women is when they have resources, oftentimes you're asked to donate money as opposed to invest your money. And that was a trend we started to notice in our kind of mid-20s in some of the circles that we were running in. It was, do you want to show up and support this cause? Do you want to make a donation? And what we started to see is that there was also another exchange that was happening that we weren't initially a part of, which was, here's a deal that you should look at. Here's an opportunity to invest early on in my company, and here's some additional information that's going to help you understand what the growth of that business is going to look like. And so we were observing those behaviors, and you start to see that, as Peter was saying, it exists in systems as well. Systems are built to support processes, and how you develop and inform the processes are what you're continuing to perpetuate. And capital is certainly, an example of that. And so Sophia also talked about, the importance of diverse allocators, diverse fund managers. And for us also, that's a competitive advantage. We are value creators. We invest in value. We've been doing that for 35 years in the public markets, and we see an undervalued community of entrepreneurs. We see new approaches to businesses and solving problems that some people are missing because they're not really thinking about the true TAM or the opportunities to super serve those that may not be the first ones that we think of. And so your perspective and the way in which you approach a problem is incredibly important, and oftentimes that's where the value is, but you have to also believe that there's value there. And in the conversation in Detroit, whether or underrepresented communities, that's always this tension with the word impact for us, because on some level, it's almost as though the assumption is you're not going to generate value or excess returns, and we just think just the opposite.
I couldn't agree more. In CTA, we have our $10 million fund, and we say, like, we are here to make money, and we're going to women in diverse funds because they're seeing deals you're not seeing. And so that's a competitive advantage for us. But to your other point, you know, when it's philanthropic, when budgets, you know, get cut, it's one of the first things. So making sure that it's an investment that benefits everyone is central. So $200 million, Peter. Plus more. I mean, one, it came at such an incredible and important time, and a lot of what we're seeing in Detroit now is because of that initial $200 million investment from JPMorgan.
So I'll just say a couple things. When we came in 2013, you know, this is not a news flash, a lot was broken. And part of it, we talked about systems, you didn't have the systems in place. There weren't the systems in place here that actually that would encourage the kind of investment we want. And so one of our big early focuses, which is what you actually need philanthropic capital. How do you actually create those systems? And I'll give you just two examples. One was the workforce system. You had this disconnect. You know, a quarter of the Detroit's population was unemployed, and there weren't jobs being created in the city. So understanding where the jobs are, how do you connect employers to job seekers? One of the earliest investments we made is now what's Detroit at Work, which has been a phenomenal addition to the city in terms of working with, and in fact, one of the points I'll make, we created, I was telling Josh this morning, just in Corktown, a virtual call center. So we now have 100 Corktown residents who are managing $1 million in call volume a year. Arota over here runs it for us. Out of their homes, these are virtual employees. We actually do recognize that there are some jobs that can be done virtually. And they're actually beating the metrics of our brick and mortar call center. So we're actually getting better value out of call center employees in Detroit, in many cases we are out of Orlando and the Philippines and Arizona. And so there is incredible talent. I mean, this is when we talk about, there's incredible talent sitting in communities that are so often overlooked. We could not have done that without Detroit at Work. I'm getting some nods from my colleagues. The other thing we were talking about, you know, one of the challenges when we first came in, there was all this development money coming in. Some of it was for dealing with the, you know, knocking down vacant properties, but a lot of the Black and brown and women entrepreneurs who wanted to be part of that could not get capital. Working with Mayor Duggan, he said that I need to create a system, and we created a program called the Entrepreneurs of Color Fund, which we talked about the other day, which, you know, these are people who could not get normal financing from companies. In the first 2 years, we had 2 defaults. That's a pretty good, it is now a program that we've actually replicated in 12 cities around the country. And so thinking about how do you actually create the systems, and I would say for us as a, you know, I don't know if we want to get into the impact, but the result for our business is booming in the city of Detroit. Our deposits in the last 10 years are up $20 billion. Our consumer balances are up. Our business balances are up. That's a good thing for our shareholders. So anyone who says this is some separate thing from your business strategy, this is about shareholder value. And I think demonstrating that you can, when you invest in overlooked communities, there's so much talent, there's so much innovation sitting there. And if you bring it out, it's good for it. Listen, it's good for our company, it's good for the city, and it's good for the.
And I Jamie Dimon's newsletter to shareholders, and it speaks to your point, what we're discussing. It has to be part of your DNA. It can't be an add-on. But he says, helping to create a stronger, more inclusive economy and making investments in cities like Detroit that show how business and government leaders can work together to solve problems. Like, it is incredible, but it is a partnership.
And I want to give, we won't invest in the partnerships that we saw. This is what we saw when we came in 2013 and 14. We saw a mayor who came in saying, I don't care if you're Republican or Democrat or, black, brown, white, or yellow. If you want to be part of the city's resurgence, we want to work with you. We saw incredible organizations. And listen, the city had sort of hit a low, and it was the people who said, we are going to chart a different course. And at the end of the day, for all the numbers and all the statistics, you're investing in the people, and the bet we were making in every way possible was on the people of the city.
Incredible. You talked a little bit about some of the challenges and then kind of learnings or outcomes. Can you share any more?
Well, I mean, listen, in terms of the outcomes, look, you've got, GDP among Detroit residents is up 23%. Unemployment is now less than 7%. One of the statistics I like the most, we have now cut in half in 10 years the number of people in the city of Detroit who didn't have access to the banking system. And so, and this, again, I can show you, and listen, you add to it Moody's and you add to it the census. I mean, you add to so many statistics what this city has done. And then you look at how our business is doing. And look, here was the alternative. If we just said, okay, there were to your points earlier, changing these systems is hard. There are a lot of people who are very invested in how things are currently done. And when I went back after 6 months and said to Jamie and our operating committee, I think we can invest $100 million, I was very lucky that the cool winds of democracy had not blown through JPMorgan Chase, because the vote would have been about 90-1 saying don't do it. This doesn't make any sense. And Jamie said we have to try. And listen, and we did. So the fact is we have to keep working at it. And when you can show that a city's economic growth matches a company's economic growth. And I don't like to name competitors in here, but we've got competitors who are opening offices here for the first time in 30 years. That's a sign that there is enormous opportunity. And this is something that we're now replicating in places around the country. And last thing I'll say, because the country is so divided right now. And, putting aside politics, it's divided because there are a lot of people who have been passed over, people in cities, people in rural areas. And this is for companies. If we don't solve these divisions, this is terrible for the business climate. And so we have to look for ways and look for partners who will work with us to try to solve this. And this is what, you don't see it in Washington every day, you see it in cities and states. And that's why we're so proud of the work we're doing here.
Wonderful. So, Nia, Detroit is in your DNA. You are a native Detroiter. And I loved learning more about your family history and family businesses in Detroit are incredibly important. And you bridging the traditional with the new, particularly going into venture. Can you talk a little bit about Union Heritage?
Yes, I'd be happy to. Our managing partner and chief investment officer, Derek Bass, also my father, is peak dad. If you ever want to find my dad when we're on stage, literally,
Hi,
he
Dad.
has his phone out and he's like the happiest person ever. And I think that's just a function of the fact that my dad gets up and works every day and he's just happy every day. He loves what he does. And 35 years ago, he founded Union Heritage here in Detroit, and we have been managing on the public side, public pension funds, institutional capital into a public market strategy. And the idea was that working people deserve the same level of discipline and rigor to their investment portfolio to provide and safeguard really hopes and dreams for their families. And so we have really internalized the legacy of that respect. And it's named, in honor of my grandparents who were all union workers. And what we love so much about being in this building is that before it was the book depository, it was actually the main post office. And my grandfather was a mail clerk, and he worked in this building. Mm-hmm. And when we launched Union Heritage Ventures, our venture capital arm, 2 years ago, after a decade of angel investing, we spent some time to really listen and learn from the ecosystem. And we love right now that on the third floor here is where you will find our headquarters for Union Heritage Ventures. And as you were saying, many firsts, first African-American venture capital firm that's majority held and majority owned by women. And it feels really special to be able to do that. It feels very important, but it really connects us to the why we do what we do, and it's really for the people. And Sophia, alluded to that as well. Like, we're activists by nature, and we're in this work because we believe that capital can really solve problems and make people's lives better. We also think about our philanthropy as philanthropic investment, and so I love Peter so much about, like, there's a role for philanthropy, but I also love the way that you guys engage in that work. You're creating systems that are going to be able to continue to drive value and other people can build around, because all we needed was someone to step up and help us figure out what the train tracks looked like so that more good ideas could kind of travel down them. And so we have those three sort of branches of our firm, and I'm very happy to serve as I have the opportunity to touch all of them. And I do most of my work here from this building, and makes it very easy to go to meetings for our portfolio companies because many of them are in the building, and also some new companies that we're looking at as well. So we're really excited to be here.
I love that. And Sophia, I love it. You have your best friend, and she's like, come home with me. And now you're a general partner at Union Heritage.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that journey and why Detroit was so significant?
Yeah, well, very much in the way that we talk about the why. For us, I think, similarly to you, what you were saying about philanthropic investment, when we met at a conference in our 20s, we were just, idealistic kids looking around going, we can absolutely change the world, right? And when we thought about how to do that, our first steps through the door were through cause work. They were through philanthropy. That then led us into politics and true activism, because, anybody who says they don't do politics, I'm like, well, politics is doing you and the rest of us every day. Like, everything is political, the roads we drive on outside and the systems that we live in. And so how do we design a better future for our communities? And as we really started to look at policy, philanthropy led us to policy, and it's impossible to learn about policy and how these systems are built without consistently coming back to money, because capital is power. And when we think about places where we have the sorts of disparities we were referencing earlier, whether it was the state that you found Detroit in when JPMorgan came in, whether it's in one of my other favorite cities that often gets flown over and should not, Tulsa, Oklahoma. Nehemiah Frank is here from the Black Wall Street Times. Cities like ours often suffer from disparity because of those root causes that are financial, political, historic. And so for us, when we started a business here, again, to solve a problem, we were young women working in media. We couldn't get our hair done together. We were like, well, the beauty industry is racist. What are we going to do about it? We'll go and start this business together in Detroit and solve a problem. And it wasn't lost on us that as women who come from media, we experience certain levels of privilege. But as small business owners in a burgeoning city, we also experienced small business owner hardships. And when we really looked across the landscape, we saw how many female entrepreneurs, and then particularly female entrepreneurs of color, were having a hard time accessing capital. And it really took us back to that, wonderful Desmond Tutu adage, like, you're only going to pull people out of the river for so long until you go upstream and figure out who's pushing them in. And if you want to teach a man to fish, the other wonderful adage that is so true, you have to figure out how to give people the resources to do so. And so for us, we really were able to take, a decade and a half of experience as entrepreneurs, storytellers, and investors, and start to look at a much bigger dream and a bigger potential. And we realized, well, if not us, then who? So here we are.
Yeah. I just also wanted to jump in and kind of give Peter and JPMorgan like their flowers. Like when we talk about the Entrepreneurs of Color Fund, our business was actually one of the first recipients of it as well. It enabled us to take out a construction loan to actually build the physical space that was needed for our business, and we're incredibly grateful for that. Yes,
And we
so
came
thank you
and we came in on time and under budget, I would like to say, which is rare in construction, but thank you.
Yes,
Can
but
I? No, go ahead. You finish.
well, I was going
You want to say more about JPMorgan? That's fine. I don't want to interrupt.
Go on, go on.
Well, but what I was going to say is, unfortunately, that business was a COVID casualty. And that's what happens. There are ups and downs in business, and especially for us as early stage investors, you have to be comfortable tolerating risk and getting comfortable with it. Because we've got a public market business that's very conservative, we can take more risk here in early stage Michigan and really sort of focus, because we've spent 35 years being disciplined enough to understand how to take that risk. And that's what JPMorgan did as well. Like, they came in and said, we're going to take the risk. Everything is not going to be philanthropy. Like, it was debt. We had a business relationship, and we had to reconcile that relationship on the back end. But I don't know if it wasn't for us building that with the support of JPMorgan and various partners around the city and investors, that we would have felt so called to make sure that the next thing we did was hyper-local. Because there were lots of places. We could have built a national fund, but we all said it has to be here first. The first one has to be here.
So,
I'll be quick, I promise. But I think this conversation about how capital, not only how capital is allocated, but how you're using different forms of capital is so important, and it doesn't occur in most cities right now. Because usually you got people saying just throw money at the problem. And the problem in Detroit wasn't money. There was a lot of money being thrown at Detroit for years. But when we first came in, there was literally no market rate and market level capital coming into the city. And you saw, Invest Detroit has a great chart to show over the years that you're seeing when we did the Scott building next to Little Caesars, you started half the project was market rate. How do you begin to think about that trajectory of where philanthropic capital plays a role, where lower cost capital plays a role? And ultimately, if you want something sustainable, you have to be able to bring in this market rate capital, which is what you're seeing in Detroit today.
I mean, we're seeing that conversation even happen like within the early stage venture ecosystem, right? Like, there has to be a role for the nonprofit venture model and traditional market venture, because that's also what accelerates investment from the coast to come into Michigan. It de-risks Michigan for them because they understand that the investors are benchmarking against, you know, the same sort of metrics that they are as well. They're modeling growth similarly. And so we definitely need these blended models, a nonprofit venture, traditional venture, debt instruments, but it's really this sort of collective-based approach that I think we're working through here in Detroit and in Michigan and getting better at every day. That is really what makes us special.
And what's exciting about it is creating a robust system like this allows for more and more people to access it and be a part of it. And that's really the goal. You know, we're not really interested in doing more of the same. We're really interested in making bigger buckets, building bigger tables. And it does feel like so much of the spirit of this city, it is generative, as you said earlier, and it's so exciting to be a part of it. And, you know, we met some data scientists backstage, and like, I love the data. I love the 10-year report. I'm like, please give me all the stats. It's really, really wonderful to see it, not just, again, you know, emotionally or morally, but it's nice to see that the math is mathing.
So women receive less than 2% of venture funding. That's one of the reasons why our fund was so important. Entrepreneurs of color, even less. So I was excited. I heard some announcements from the state of Michigan regarding venture funding. And I know we're going to hear from Michigan Lieutenant Governor Garlin Gilchrist a little later in the program, but I do have to shout out his work and the work of MEDC, not just about attracting new businesses, but supporting the ones that are already here in Michigan. At CES, the team is always there talking about why Michigan is the place to start your business or invest. So they made an announcement recently that they've approved an investment to support Union Heritage's Future Heritage Fund, which will target socially and economically disenfranchised individuals own businesses and very small businesses. First, congratulations. That's incredible. So that's recent news, but like, what's your vision for that?
Yeah, so we, as you said, we're incredibly grateful to the state, to the governor, to the lieutenant governor, everyone at the MEDC, the Michigan Strategic Fund Board for their support. And when we talk about addressing the issues and the barriers to entry into venture, the state, I think, really understands that and is trying to be sort of solutions oriented. When we talk about barriers to entry, it could be anything from track record or just these various qualifications for emerging managers. And so it is really a vote of confidence that the state has said, we understand that these are not first-time managers. This is an institutional firm with 35 years of experience. What we have to make sure that we do is help eliminate the barriers to entry for these types of firms so that we have more of them. So again, it's like when you understand that like we're the first in all of these respects, there's a reason. It's because it's very hard to do. So I do feel very proud of the team for getting to this point and for doing everything we can to keep the door open for other firms that come behind us, because there needs to be more representation. And so much of the thesis is about underrepresentation. So whether that's women, people of color, people in rural areas, military veterans, members of the LGBTQIA community, we're actively looking and searching to make sure across the state of Michigan that we're not missing those founders. If we find those founders, what stage of growth are they in? How can we help to reduce friction and eliminate barriers for their growth in this Michigan ecosystem? Because if we can get it right here, these are also innovations that can translate into other markets. So we're proud to really dig in and do that work and to spend some time, not just here in Michigan, but really across the state as well.
Excellent. And if we get it right here in Detroit, there's no need to go to Silicon Valley. There's no need to go to New York. You can stay in Detroit and build your businesses.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're going to recruit Peter here.
So, I love we're talking about all of the like wonderful things that are happening, but everything isn't great. I mean, you talked about the closure during COVID. So many companies suffered. And so while Detroit has some unique challenges, which I do want to surface and maybe even talk about some solutions, there's something uniquely special about Detroit, too, that brings people in. So I want to kind of have that conversation. I mean, let's talk about the challenges and more importantly, how we're approaching and overcoming when it comes to investing here in Detroit or, if you're trying to build a workforce. But also, from your experience, why are people gravitating towards Detroit and are willing to bet on Detroit despite those challenges? Jump in, everyone.
I mean, listen, I'll sort of double down on this. We were having a conversation at the JPMorgan Operating Committee recently about why some of our investments went south. We don't always get it right. And this had nothing to do with Detroit. And for all the sort of statistics and numbers and data, it was about the people you're investing in. And I really do think at the end of the day, for all the numbers and all the data, this came down to the people of the city and the sense of collaboration, the sense of leadership. And I'll tell you, I was thinking about this last night. We were wandering, my colleagues, Shannon and Steve, we were wandering around at the concert last night. And for every metric I can cite about why this investment has been a success for us, I don't know, I can't quantify this, but to see the pride on the faces of people in that crowd yesterday, because what their faces were, this is our city. And that I can't put a number on that, but at the end of the day, that's the kind of secret sauce that you have to find. Are these people you want to work with? Are these people who are going to be with you from thick and thin? And I think that, for us, that's the special thing about this city. And listen, my colleague Arati, who started her career with Chase in Orlando and then moved to Houston, when we were setting up, she raised her hand and said, I want to move to Detroit. I want to be part of that. And she's now leading a team of 100 people sitting in the city. And I think it's because of the people of this. And she just got married. I'm going to keep embarrassing her.
Congratulations.
But, you know, but that, I honestly think at the end of the day, you sit across a table and you say, is this someone I actually want to work with? They're going to be tough times. Things are going to go wrong. And are we going to be in this together? And I think that's, to me, that's the secret sauce of Detroit.
And that spirit of collaboration is so inspiring. It's part of, you know, the reason that I love this place and I love to be here as often as I can. And even here within this building, you know, where our legacy is, where we are envisioning from, you know, the history of Nia's family and the legacy of this city, we're envisioning a new future and what we can do, you know, as women and as entrepreneurs to see some of the challenges and the way the collaborative spirit of this place responds to them inspires me. You know, is it frustrating for us to know that typically it takes a founder here 24 months longer to raise $500,000 in capital than it does on the coast? Yes, that's immensely frustrating. It's part of why we do what we do. But when you see founders, and particularly founders of color in this city, saying, there's something going on here that we're obviously missing, we don't have access to something, what is it? And they start Black Tech Saturdays in this building, and it grows from 5 entrepreneurs to 75 entrepreneurs gathering and sharing information and resources and like the ideas and the innovations that iterate out of this space because people are saying, oh no, we're not trying to gatekeep, we want to help each other get ahead. We believe that we'll go farther together. That is incredibly inspiring, I think, for anyone in any vertical of business to witness and to want to be a part of.
Oh, please, no, I was going to say, well, I know I'm watching this clock over here, and I know we've had some questions from the audience, but I want to make sure you make your point. Well, I'm going to ask an open-ended question, and actually it was one of my last questions, particularly advice for entrepreneurs and investors, but we have some questions from the audience. I've been learning that in order to serve underrepresented founders, we need to create space for them. Are there any actions or metrics you're implementing today to make that space in any area that traditionally doesn't?
I just want to make sure I understand the question. How to make space for underrepresented founders?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, I think Sophia touched on a good point. The first thing is to be in spaces with other underrepresented founders. And Black Tech Saturdays is an incredibly great opportunity to do that. And a rich is generative, and it was for that purpose, was to come together, organize, and figure out, are we asking each other, do we need the same things from the ecosystem, and can we learn together? I also think, you know, allocators are important. Underrepresented founders need to also speak to underrepresented allocators, and there's not as many of us in the state, but, you know, we're trying to do the best that we can. You know, we have some members of our team, Josh Tucker, who's our head of SVP of research and runs the portfolio with my dad, is an incredible resource. He is so generous with his time. He's here in the back, and he is always more than willing to sit with folks and to help them figure out what the next best action is, even if they aren't ready for investment. You know, there are other firms that might say, you're not ready and come back when you're ready. We don't say that. We say you might not be ready for this vehicle right now, but here are some non-dilutive, you know, capital opportunities that you might want to seek, because when we write a check, we're going to take a piece of the company. We might say, here's a new way of thinking about tracking and developing metrics that are to teach to the test in some respects, that are going to be what these other firms are looking for. And so I think just really understanding the ecosystem and how to move through it, and as an underrepresented founder, doing that in community, and understanding that other people have asked the question before you have. Like, there are some pathways that exist, and it's just kind of make sure that you can get on them. But if you can't find them, come to us, and we will happily sort of point you in what you think is, you know, a good direction.
And I'm glad you mentioned Black Tech Saturdays here. And also, you know, that's what we try to, you want to find community, you want to find people, whether, you know, it's women in tech or LGBT and allies, you just want to kind of understand that there's someone there that has there's a common kind of part or experience that you all can have shared experience and possibly best practices. So that is incredibly important. I'm glad that that's happening here at Michigan Central.
And Phomology, Megan Ward's organization, is another great one that's also like based here as well.
And another question we received, but I think we answered, how do we attract companies here and or retain the amazing talent? I think you've talked about it.
Listen, I think you attract companies by the talent. I mean, that if when, we can make a decision in New York that we're going to open a call center, open branches, but this is where, I mentioned Detroit at work, understanding how you keep, it's not just importing talent, but growing talent. And that's, I mean, to me, the special thing here is you have a lot of talent sitting in, Corktown and in neighborhoods of the city who haven't traditionally gotten the opportunities. And I'll remember the first time I met Mayor Duggan, this was like right after he took office, and we were talking about what we're doing. He said, the city can't come back until the neighborhoods come back. And I think focusing on talent, this is not just about downtown, focusing on talent sitting in neighborhoods and creating the opportunity for them and giving them a chance to grow. And listen, I think the fact when you talk about attracting talent, it's good restaurant, the fact the Lions are doing well is not bad, and the fact that you got, those are people live where you got good restaurant scenes, great food, you got the bikeways and the parks. I mean, this is all a big part of how do you create a place that people want to live and grow and raise their families.
Yeah,
And I think you're getting that to here.
There was Travel Noir, who's like a national kind of travel mag, had an article that came out this week, and they said Detroit's vibe is unmatched, and that's like truly how we feel. Like,
Yes.
it's the best place. It's like we have the best food, we have the best people, we have the best companies. We're building like cool things, like just vibe unmatched.
I think that's generally great to close on. The math works, the money works, you're going to make it, but that intangible pride that we have in Detroit and having people who want to come here, that is, it's palatable. It may not be something you can write down on a balance sheet, but it's real. So please join me in thanking our wonderful panel. Nia, Sophia, Peter, thank you so much.
Thank you.
But this is really about less words, but mostly, and most importantly, actions and dollars. So thank you for everything that you all do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
One truth about the maritime domain is it's very fragmented. Every port operates differently. Every shipping company operates differently. How can we leverage technology to make huge systematic gains in decarbonizing by making the systems of global shipping more efficient? That's what we're leveraging our robotics to do. Mythos is a company that's creating a brand new technology, disruptive to the industry. As developing new technologies, you need to prove it, to be able to put it to work, to have the largest gains in what you're trying to accomplish. Arati is a world-first, tightly integrated, autonomous vessel. It's made specifically so that ports can get more up-to-date information on their turning basins and their channels, how much cargo can move in and out of the waterways so that they can start really optimizing their operations. Arati provides this critical data set that the shipping companies need so they can move cargo efficiently.
Hydrography is mapping the bottom of the seafloor. We're trying to map the bottom of the seafloor near ports and channels where we have busy waterways and we need to get more ships in and safer and get them heavier loaded so we get deeper ships into these ports. We vertically integrated all the components for hydrographic survey and autonomy together so that we can do the task of hydrography while being autonomous.
Mythos' ability to produce rapid data for underwater survey is going to give us the ability to provide real-time information to shippers and vessel operators so that they are best educated when not only bringing cargo into the Port of Monroe, but any of those around the world.
So after this pilot, we're literally going to be able to take Arati and its full data pipeline, which is automated, and have a real complete product that we can throw out into the market and promote to other ports. So that's a huge win for us.
Mythos' presence at the Port of Monroe is not only exciting, but proof positive that we are on our way to a very fruitful relationship with Newlab in Michigan Central. The technology that they're employing with their AI-powered vessel, the hydrographic survey that they're doing, is going to help us identify the challenges we might face now and in the future with the evolution of our waterway.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay in the back? Great. My name is Joe Dooley. I work for Google's policy team in Washington, D.C. Spend a lot of time on AI issues, and so I'm here to talk a little bit about how we see this big topic and think about how it's related to a lot of the work going on here. Before I get into that, we do have a question for this session. If you do want to take out your phones and scan the QR code, how do you anticipate AI affecting your business or industry in the next year? And then we will, I think, get to the responses at the end. And so if you want to fill that out while we're talking. Again, Google has invested a lot in artificial intelligence, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But first, just congratulations on everything that's going on here at Michigan Central. We are a proud founding partner of this, new initiative, and our Code Next lab is located here. I'm doing a lot of work to train Black and brown students in computer science and artificial intelligence in this area, so we're really excited about the work that they're going to be doing here in Detroit. But for us, we want to talk about what AI is and how we think about it in the world. And so just, at a very basic level, it is technologies that can mimic human behavior in different ways. And that's a lot of different things, and we really focus and spend a lot of time on machine learning, which is a subset of AI, which is allowing computers to find patterns in large data sets. And, this sounds technical, it sounds, maybe not accessible to all of us, but we're using it every day in a number of ways. If you have an email account, you probably have a spam folder that, automatically filters out stuff that you probably don't want to see, and hopefully it's doing a good job. Financial institutions may call you and say, did you make this transaction? It's suspicious. A lot of those kinds of things in our everyday lives now are already using artificial intelligence. But there's more to come, and we're committed to building those and providing them responsibly and in accordance with AI principles. And let's talk a little bit more about what AI can do. So in this example, you can see that AI can classify different data. So whether it's a sound, what is this sound I'm hearing? Or what is this image that I'm looking at? It gets pretty good at telling you this is a dog, this is a cat, this is a blue jay that you're hearing, this is an eagle. It gets pretty good at that. It can also make predictions based on data sets. So we have a tool called Flood Hub that will provide up to 7 days of forecasting when a certain region or community might experience flooding and at what level of intensity, which can be really important because if you're a first responder or a government or a resident of that area and you want to know when is the day to bring supplies in, when is the day to get out of that area when the flooding is going to be worst, you can get a pretty good assessment of that up to a week in advance. In addition to prediction, you can do language understanding. And I think all of us have had some kind of engagement with a chatbot or maybe a search tool, and you say, I'm hungry, and hopefully what it's doing is telling you where you can find food near you as opposed to telling you why you might be experiencing hunger. I think we all understand that someone wants to find food and not be explained to. And what's really new over the last 18 months is that AI can also generate new content that has never been seen before. This is what ChatGPT does. This is what Google's Gemini tool does. Based on existing data that it has learned from, you can have it draft you a memo to your team You can have it create some new musical sounds, a melody perhaps. I like to play around and do things like write a 4 stanza poem about my favorite sports team and do it in this language. And it'll do that pretty well and pretty quickly. And that's, it's fun, it's exciting, it's useful. But, all of these things, to what end? Why are we investing in this? And that's really because we think some of the advancements in AI can help us with some of the biggest, stickiest problems that we face in society. And so I'm going to give you an example that we think is really powerful and is accessible to everyone. We all have proteins in every cell of our body doing different functions. Sometimes they're helping us, with how our body operates. Sometimes proteins create problems in our bodies. If they have a mutation, they could have a relationship to a specific disease or condition. But in order to understand how proteins work and how we can create treatments where there is a problem or a medication to address a condition, you have to understand how these proteins are structured. This is an example of how one of the 200 million known proteins in the universe is structured. Obviously, it's very complex, and if you want to create an effective treatment, it's important to understand that at the outset. But it's pretty time intensive to do manually. And so it typically takes a graduate student about 4 or 5 years to map a single protein. And if you have 200 million of those in the universe, that's a lot of time and a lot of effort by a lot of people. And so what we were able to do is with the 100,000 proteins that researchers have already mapped, is project the structures of the remaining 200 million known proteins. And so how is this significant? Obviously, you've saved almost 1 billion research years that now people can spend their time on jumping to the next step and saying, now that we understand the structure of these proteins, what can we do with them? Are we going to be able to understand the relationship and how they interact with diseases like cancer or conditions like autism, and what can we do from there? And what we did when we mapped these proteins is we gave the findings away to the research community globally for free. So we have almost 2 million people who have accessed our database and are using these findings to advance what they are doing in various ways. And obviously, these kinds of really large breakthroughs can have really significant economic benefits attached to them. But also all of the little efficiencies that we might gain from using an AI tool every day, saving 15 minutes when you write a memo, et cetera, that all adds up. And I don't want to focus, on these specific numbers, but just noting that, entities like McKinsey and Goldman Sachs and others really see a lot of potential. And as a result, we have a lot of entities, including those in Michigan, that are investing in AI and, for a variety of use cases. The automakers obviously use it in a number of capacities, including for customer engagement. AAA actually has a really interesting one. They have been developing an AI sensor that technicians can set out when they are on the side of the road fixing a vehicle. And there might be traffic whizzing by at high speeds and in close proximity. And what the sensor does is it can alert them up to 3 or 4 seconds in advance, like, hey, something's coming that might create a dangerous situation. And it lets them know so that they can get out of the way. And, preventing accidents or deaths on the side of the road, like, obviously we can all relate to that, and it's really important. Not necessarily a use case that Google envisioned, but some smart person at AAA kind of figured out. City of Dearborn, just down the road, they are using AI in a number of ways for constituent engagement, government performance, as well as workforce training. And hopefully the folks at Newlab and all of their innovators and founders are finding new creative ways to use these tools as well. It does beg the question, if we are going to start using this more, what does this mean for jobs? Yours, mine, other people's. And I think all of us will likely experience changes in how we do our work. I might use it more to help me write memos or do research or sift through a report that's really long that I don't have time to read. And I think in the bigger picture, we also think about how technology changes jobs and employment over time. Technology really leads to a lot of new jobs and new fields. And obviously, Michigan knows that from the auto industry and mass production. The airline industry that didn't exist 100 years ago now employs hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people around the world. So we're bullish on the fact that there will be new fields and new sectors created with new jobs. We just have to make sure that as we progress in that direction, we're making sure people understand how to use AI and are not left behind. And so to that end, what we put out maybe last year, it's called an AI opportunity agenda. And really it's us suggesting a whole of society approach, not just Google, but in partnership with civil society, the public sector, other business partners, certainly research institutions, to figure out how to collectively invest in infrastructure. This is a picture of a Google data center, which powers all of our AI tools. When you get your Gmail or something like that, it's routed through a data center. In addition to some of that hard investment, but also enabling innovation. So not just investing in R&D, but making sure that we have the right legal structures to give innovators and other businesses the confidence and certainty that they need to keep investing in AI applications. And then of course, again, building human capital, investing in training for workers, and making sure we're not creating concentrations in pockets of AI use, but that it's accessible everywhere and for everyone, regardless of who they are. And one of the first steps to kind of realizing those goals, about a month ago, we announced an opportunity fund. It's $75 million to train 1 million workers in the United States. And so the way we're going to do that is by partnering with some best-in-class workforce development organizations. I've included a couple of their logos up here. There's more. But really, we will be focused on some specific groups of people, folks who are underrepresented, rural areas, educators, small businesses, nonprofits, and the public sector. So that is who we're going to try and focus our dollars at in partnership with some of these kinds of organizations to make sure we are training people, preparing them, and helping them use AI for whatever their passion is or whatever they need to use it for in their daily lives. And so certainly that is something, as we continue to make announcements of where this is available and how people can partner with us on. If you're interested, we hope that you will let us know. And so to that end, I think that's all that I'm going to talk about at the moment. But if you have questions, you can follow up with myself. My colleague Megan is based here in Detroit and works with Michigan Central. And so we want to be a partner. We are looking forward to all the work that's going on here. And hopefully, we will see you again soon. Thank you. And did we have a response to the question that we wanted to profile? Should I be? Okay, thank you.
Black Tech Saturdays is a meetup for entrepreneurs, job seekers, and people in the tech community. But it's really, how do we demystify tech in Detroit?
What started as just 5 or 10 people meeting up at a coffee shop has grown into industry leaders, founders, investors, taking what they've learned and pouring that into the community.
When you talk to a lot of underrepresented founders, Black, brown founders, the companies we're building are to solve issues that are deeply important to us because of where we grew up and where we come from. The more we can empower that, we can actually see different problems solved and really invest in innovation differently here in Michigan. Detroit's a really special place because it's very communal. It's a spirit of collaboration because people share their investor contacts, their customer contacts. We really don't have to compete with each other. If we can solve it here, we can solve it everywhere, and that mentality, it's contagious.
I think what I'm most proud of is the community now has somewhere to go where they feel comfortable to learn and to share their ideas and to get a lot of support.
Last weekend, I had a founder come up to me and say, I came to you and said I needed 7 things. I have all 7 now. I didn't know I would ever get this, and I got it in 2 months. Newlab's role in Black Tech Saturdays has really been as a strategic partner. It doesn't come in and say, here is our solution. They just roll with the ecosystem and fill the gaps where they fit best.
When Johnny and I walk in these doors every day, we're welcome with all the other member companies who are here working at what they believe in. And to me, that's invaluable.
Right now in Detroit, there is a vibrant energy. This is the next great tech hub, and I'm gonna keep screaming it until we have people coming from all over to see it.
All right, good morning. How's everybody doing today? It is great to see everybody, this beautiful crowd we have today. Did everybody have a good time at the concert last night? All right, that was amazing. We had somebody for everybody. So today, my name is Hajj Flemings. I'm the founder of RebrandX. And what I'm really focused on today is what we think is one of the most profound challenges of our time. And that is the intersection between humanity, technology, and culture. A lot of the inventions that we've seen in society that have transformed the way we think about the wheel, we think about the internet that came out in 1989 when I was leaving high school. We think about the printing press, but the most transformational technology of today is artificial intelligence. And what we've noticed about artificial intelligence is this, that from its inception, it's always lacked diversity. So if we go back to 1956 and we go back to the conference at Dartmouth College, the founding fathers were not really representative. So our conversation today is really going to talk about the critical role that culture plays in that. We're also going to talk about Detroit as a hub for AI innovation. And what does that look like? Can we change the blueprint of what an AI innovation hub looks like compared to those on the coast, right? Part of what we see is that every company, every corporation is thinking about AI. So if you think about JPMorgan Chase, I was looking at a report from Jamie Dimon, and he was talking about banking innovation connected to AI. We could also look at Tyler Perry, who halted a $800 million studio project because he saw OpenAI launch or talk about Sorta, which is text to video. But what I'm excited about in terms of the conversation that we're going to have today is that AI really is a remix. It's a remix of human knowledge, images, data, books, and the internet. And so what we're going to do on this beautiful 30-acre campus called Michigan Central, this is a place where heads of states, politicians, athletes, and entertainers come here. But we have startup founders who are working on $100 million ideas. But what's more important that we're going to talk about AI today, and we're going to talk about it from the lens of how do we innovate? How do we make sure we have inclusive conversations? And so what I want to do now is I want to bring my esteemed colleagues to the panel. And so I would like to introduce or bring up Angel Bush. She's the founder of Black Women in Artificial Intelligence, all the way from Saginaw, Michigan. That's where she's from. We have John Passmore, who's the founder of Latimer, a large language model, and I'm gonna let him get into some of the details of what differentiates the model or the platform that he works on. And then we have Renee Cummings, is a data activist, a professor at the University of Virginia School of Data Science. Can we give our panelists a quick hand? So before we jump into our question, by a quick show of hands in terms of, from an AI standpoint, would you consider yourself an expert? Can you raise your hand? Would you consider yourself kind of a novice? Raise your hand. Would you consider yourself, I have no idea what AI is all about? All right, so we have people that are kind of all over the spectrum. So we're going to jump right in, and so we can talk to our panelists. So what we want to start out with, we want to talk a little bit about representation, and we know that that matters, so I want to start with Renee. So when we look at the ethical implications of data in our society, why is it important for these data sets to be representative and for us to be a part of those? And I'd love to hear your feedback. I know you do a lot of work in criminology and a lot of other areas.
Thank you so very much for that question. And let me say, it's an absolute honor to be with you in this very historic moment. When we think about data, we're thinking about everything. The world is now driven by data. Every experience is linked to data. Disaggregating data is now a billion-dollar industry. So if we are using data, we mainly use data for four things: oversight, insight, foresight, and hindsight. And that's the power of data. But for us to get data right, we've got to ensure the quality of the data is high-quality data, because data is about decision-making. It's about precision in decision-making. So when we think about data ethics, we're thinking about questions around accountability and transparency, explainability, auditability, accessibility. These are critical questions, because one of the things we've realized with data is that data has the power to create access or deny access. Data is the power on which we now build legacies. So an ethical approach to data is not only an inclusive approach, but it is a diverse approach. It is an equitable approach. So data ethics is linked to data equity, and if we get data equity right, then what we do is that we are now building the kinds of solutions that are sustainable, that are resilient, and that could lift us up as a society.
So I have a question. So how do we ensure companies that have a for-profit motive that they can be trusted with data, because it's going to expand to sensory data and a lot of other categories?
Well, I will say this: trust is the biggest question when it comes to data, and when it comes to building algorithms, and when it comes to artificial intelligence. We all know one thing: there is no AI without data. How do we trust companies? Well, we make them accountable. We've got to bring that requisite level of oversight. It comes back to today's discussion. Inclusive innovation. Who's designing? What kind of data are they designing with? What are the kinds of solutions that are being designed? Are some of these approaches actually required? So when we're thinking about data, when we're thinking about AI, when we're thinking about inclusion, it goes back to the imagination. And we begin with a diverse, inclusive, equitable, justice-oriented imagination, and then we're going to deploy the right kinds of AI solutions.
All right, so, so kind of building on that. So Angel, I know that you're about building community, and lots of times we have people who say, I can't find somebody. And I'm sure you've heard this conversation numerous times about, I can't find Black women in AI. So I'll look at the Time 100 list, and there's not a lot of African American women on there. So what would you say for people who can't seem to find, even though we have two on stage with us today, we can't find Black women in AI?
Well, first, let me thank you guys so much for having me here. I am certainly excited to be here in Detroit, Michigan. Yes, I am a little bit far from here. I am in the greatest city in America, Houston, Texas. That is my home base.
Greater than Detroit?
The greatest city in America, Houston, Texas. I stand on that. What I want to start with is how we got started, because as he alluded to, people always say, well, I can't find Black women in AI. And so what I want you to understand is the genesis of Black women in AI. We started because of Usher. Yes, that Usher. I do not know Usher. Usher does not know me. However, I was attempting to build a robot named Usher. And Usher was going to bring me hot cocoa. That's all I wanted Usher to do. And so I went down this rabbit hole of building Black women, building this robot. And so I attended YouTube University trying to find out how to build this robot named Usher. And then what happened is, along the way, I started finding out more information about artificial intelligence. And they continue to say it's the fourth industrial revolution. And so I attended an event that did not fully reflect me. And at this event, again, I'm hearing artificial intelligence is the fourth industrial revolution. But surely, I said to myself, you cannot have a revolution without Black women. And that is the genesis of Black women in artificial intelligence. So when you tell me you cannot find us, Simply Google Black women in artificial intelligence, and then you will find us.
That was amazing. And I'm sure there are a lot of women who would love to have Usher bring them some cocoa as well, too. I know that wasn't the main topic of the conversation, but that's something that's going to stand out to me for sure. All right, John. So I know you're building a large language model as it relates back to artificial intelligence. And I'm thinking back to a quote that goes back to Ludacris's manager, and it says, "We're often the oil, but never the machine," meaning that we're the talent in front of the camera. We rap, we play basketball, we go places with low barriers of entry as it relates back to tech. So I'm really interested in why the platform you're building is so important and what differentiates what you do from some of the other frontier models.
Got it. Thank you. We built Latimer.ai and launched it because of some of the things that we were seeing in terms of both bias and really the accuracy of some of the data that we were seeing or not seeing in some of the other models. So we launched the company in July, and we launched Latimer January 22nd as a large language model. We feel that it solves some of the issues that we have been seeing from whether it's an OpenAI or Google or Meta or what have you, and we'll continue to build on that.
Okay. And so, so let's just give like some examples. I know like when I've gone online and if I put the word astronaut into Midjourney, what do you think the astronaut's going to look like 100% of the time? There's no knock against anybody. It's going to be a Caucasian astronaut because it's pulling from the data. And so yours is different because what's different about the data sets that you're actually using?
So we've entered into some unique agreements with like the New York Amsterdam News, which is the second oldest Black newspaper in the United States. So we have an exclusive licensing arrangement with Eleanor Tatum there at Amsterdam News to use data sets like that we know that nobody else is really using right now. And we continue to look at some unique data sources, whether those come from HBCUs, like Howard has a tremendous data set that has not appeared yet in any large language model, Morehouse, many other colleges. And then there's a bunch of data in the public domain, whether that's those are laws or the original documents for the Emancipation Proclamation. So that needs to be included and prominently weighted in some of these models so that they can get the history accurate.
Okay. So when I started thinking about these large language models, and I want to go to you, Renee, the impact that can happen, especially to communities of color, right? Because it pulls on historical data, right? I don't know how much people know about how these machines work, but it pulls on these past data models to be able to predict the future. But what kind of impact does this have, especially to maybe a community like Detroit, a city like Detroit that's 77.8% African American?
Well, I think it's more than the large language models. As I'm a criminologist by training and a criminal psychologist. So one of the test cases in AI has actually been a Detroit case, facial recognition technology, and one Robert Williams, who comes from Detroit. And what we see with the technology, again, comes back to the lack of inclusion, the lack of diversity, and the lack of equity in our data sets. Large language models are no different. They are not really knowledge models, they are language models. And what they do is have shared throughout our time. I think what we've got to do, first of all, is really understand the importance of this technology. ChatGPT, the technology that you are deploying, really, really instrumental at this time in our history. It's a very unique technology, a very powerful technology. I'm really committed to collective augmented intelligence and the ways in which we enhance our own intellectual and work experiences by using technology, particularly large language models. I think with any technology, you've got to bring the awareness and the understanding and the education of the limitations of the technology. So we know the rewards are extraordinary. We know there are risks. but we also understand there are responsibilities. So you would find the ethical frameworks looks at risks and they look at rights. So we've got to ensure our rights are protected, we've got to ensure we understand the risks, and then we've got to move forward to harness the rewards of the technology. All communities are impacted. Too often, the inclusion conversation becomes a black and brown conversation. Inclusion in technology impacts all of us. If you're a woman of any color, this technology could be detrimental. If you're an individual with a disability of any color, discriminatory. If you are a person in your 5th and 6th floor, if you're a senior citizen, this
I
technology.
like that. 5th. How many floors total do we have? No.
People go past 10, right?
Okay.
So if you're, if you're there, there's questions around ageism. So discrimination and bias are nothing new. Of course, the technology is going to amplify that because we're pulling from those historic data sets. But then we have approaches that are celebrating a more diverse outlook, and then we bring the requisite level of awareness and understanding and literacy. The inclusion conversation begins with literacy.
Let me add this too. So, and I'm just throwing this out to anybody. So now, as we start to think about our ecosystem here in Detroit, how do we now challenge people to be creators? Like, lots of times we just become consumers, but if we want to be involved in the creation component of it, in Detroit we build stuff, we make stuff, we've always done that. So what are some of the thoughts that you have in terms of encouraging people to get on the creation side and not just the consumption side?
I think everything you just mentioned, while they're problems, they're also opportunities. So the opportunities are obvious. I mean, that's kind of how we approached it. We kind of saw that there was this bias or accuracy issue, and we launched a product. You know, it took us about 7 months to build it, and I think that there's plenty of talent in the community that can look at some of these other issues or even just building other large language models and jump in.
And it's also about understanding that we are all producers of data. Although we are consumers of the technology, it is our data that is being continuously monetized. It is our data that's building these extraordinary technical, organizations. And it is also our data that could be weaponized against us through bias and discrimination. So it's really critical for us to understand not only the very intimate relationship we have with data, and not only the power of data, but the vulnerability of data, why it needs to be protected, why we need to focus on privacy, on the ethics, and just on getting inclusion and equity right in the data space.
Also, too, I think it's interesting because now, even as we look at technology, there's always been a digital divide, right? And I think the ability to be able to build on top of stuff where there's no code and low code, to be able to get communities of color more involved. We'd love to get your thoughts in terms of kind of how you see the trajectory and accessibility of technology, not just being in a more homogenized community.
Yeah, I think that people should look at all these tools, these generative models, as decreasing some of those hurdles, because now you have a model or a piece of technology that you can just talk to, and you can ask it for a piece of code. You can ask it to, hey, can you write this piece of code that does X in Python or Java, and have a conversation. It'll deliver what you asked for. If it doesn't work properly, you can ask again. You can ask it to improve something. You can ask how to install it on your Mac or a PC. So really, there's fewer hurdles, I think, if you can use the technology.
Let me just say this, and I may not be invited back, so I'm going to say what I have to say at this point. One thing that I love about Detroit, and I'm going to go back old school, you all love for people to keep it real, and that's what I love about Detroit. So one of the things that we're going to make sure that you leave here with is the importance of being involved, the importance of understanding that you're going to have to do the research in order to be a part of this AI economy, because that is what it is. We have to start with ourselves in terms of making sure we're not waiting. Black women in AI, we are not waiting for anyone to save us. we are going to be in the room. And one thing that we've created when we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, we've created this thought process that diversity, equity, and inclusion does not help anyone. Let me explain. When we walk into the room, your product just got better. Understand that when men walk into the room, your product just got better. Understand that when women walk into the room, your product just got better. Understand that those of different abilities, when they come into the room, the product just got better. So when companies are talking about the bottom line, that's connected with your product just getting better. And understand this one thing before I leave, I must say this, because we're always putting this situation or the thought process and the perspective of we want a seat at the table. This is not popular, what I'm about to say to you. I don't want a seat at the table. Understand, I'm going to say that again for the people in the back who may not have heard me. I do not want a seat at the table, because here's the thing, I don't want a seat at the table that does not include power, authority, and influence. Otherwise, I am just in the room. I am window dressing. I am a press release, and I am a photo op. I do not want a seat at the table that does not include power, authority, and influence. Because when I have power, authority, and influence, I can walk through that door and I can leave it open for each and every one of you to follow. I don't want a seat at the table.
So this is interesting. This is interesting, though.
Of diversity, equity, and inclusion.
So I think there are different roles, right? And everybody has to figure out how they fit into the puzzle. So you want to be in a position of power. There are other people that just want to work on the technology. There are other people that want to make sure that there are fair and equitable outcomes. And so I think it's really interesting just to figure out how do we fit into this, right? And so I guess, so my question is that if we look at Detroit, what are some thoughts that you guys and ladies have about how can we make Detroit a place where now we have more AI activation, we have more innovation happening here that really maps back to what really makes us unique? Because I think the culture part is really important.
So I will say this, some of the most difficult AI cases, the ones that really undermine civil and human rights and really look at questions around mistaken identity and wrongful arrest when it comes to AI and facial recognition, have come out of Detroit. We need to pull those cases back, and I think what we saw last night, which was absolutely extraordinary, the diversity, the talent, the imagination of Detroit. So you begin with imagination, you begin with that inclusive imagination, and then you start to build your stakeholders. AI is about all of us. Each and every one of us, our data is included in those large language models and those large action models. But it also goes back to that question of literacy. How literate when it comes to AI and data is Detroit? How is Detroit using its data? How is Detroit building on the data? What about those historic data sets? What about data trauma? Is it justice-led? Is it justice-oriented building? So it comes back to the imagination, and it comes back to that understanding that everyone needs to be included.
Conversations don't just turn into a super technical conversation, right? So say, for instance, for somebody who's interested in sports, how does AI connect it? Someone who's interested in entertainment and wants to be able to use this. There are a lot of people out there who are concerned that this is going to end humanity and they don't want to touch this. What would you say to those who are scared to touch it because it's new to them or they don't understand the origin of it?
If you, let me say this, you may need to allow fear to move you to action. Many people are afraid of the technology. Black women in AI, we have created a customized chat GPT so that if you love ice cream and you have a passion for ice cream, for example, you can go into this GPT and ask them, what can you do in terms of artificial intelligence? It will give you that information, and then it will give you the information that says, go to this university or go to this school, and these are the classes that you can take. So we have created a custom GPT that answers those questions that you're talking about.
Okay. Gotcha, gotcha. Anybody else want to add on to that?
I mean, we're a for-profit company, so I would say one thing and one ingredient that's always going to be necessary is access to capital. So you have a lot of talent, whether it's in sports or what have you, and these entrepreneurs just need support in terms of capital as well as education or knowledge. I think the knowledge is out there. Capital, maybe not always to the degree that it should be.
Yeah, I know in our region here, we're looking to attract and retain more young talent. As I get older, I want to make sure that the young people or people who are looking at this from a different lens are the kind of people that we can attract to our community, because that's what really makes it vibrant. Are there any case studies that you guys are seeing in other cities or other communities where there have like young entrepreneurs who are building amazing products that we can use as a benchmark as it relates back to Detroit?
I think that you bring up an important point, that we're kind of disconnected, so we're not aware of all the things that are going on in different cities, whether that's Atlanta. I was just at Tennessee State University yesterday, and they're doing amazing things. So we do have to connect the dots, so to speak, and communicate, because there's a lot going on. There's a lot of innovation already in terms of diverse entrepreneurs creating young businesses. So that's kind of a media thing. We do have rollingout.com here today, so hopefully they can support some of that effort in making sure that we're all aware of some of the things that are going on.
All right, so can the founder of rollingout.com raise his hand real quick? All right, right there in the front row, we want to make sure. All right, let's give him a hand real quick, and then we have some questions from the audience. So the first question is, how are large AI players like Google and OpenAI working with the panelists? And if this isn't happening, what can we do to encourage that type of collaboration?
That is a wonderful question. We are certainly open to a partnership with Google, but we actually have a partnership with Microsoft and NVIDIA and Amazon and Capital One and a number of other organizations. And what we focus on, our mission at Black Women in AI, is to educate, engage, embrace, and empower Black women in the artificial intelligence sector. And so within that realm, we specifically focus on education and making sure that we are aware of what a large language model is. We are aware of the verbiage that is being utilized around AI, because a lot of people can get lost in the verbiage alone. So we make sure that we understand custom vision models and things of that nature. And so, again, we would love a partnership with Google, but right now we're working with Microsoft, we're working with NVIDIA, we're working with Capital One, we're working with...
Let's give her a hand for all those great partnerships. It takes money to build great communities and to do great things. Anyone else?
Well, certainly, as I spend a lot of time in those big tech boardrooms, really helping them figure out those ethical frameworks, and of course, building the kinds of solutions that are going to be equitable and of course, always justice-oriented. I will say at the beginning of OpenAI, I did spend some one-on-one time with Sam Altman before he deployed that technology. And I will also always put in a plug for the University of Virginia School of Data Science, our master's and our PhD program. Absolutely brilliant, and that's where you're going to find some of the most ethical data scientists doing some of the most extraordinary things.
Including you, right? Okay, all right. Also, too, we're going to be starting an AI community here at Michigan Central. It's going to launch June 20th. You'll start to hear more information about that. Our next question from the studio audience is, the University of Michigan was the first university in the country to create its own branded AI tool for the use of students, faculty, and staff. How would the panelists ideally work with Michigan's large universities? That's a great question.
Well, we want to plug in with University of Michigan. We were already talking to them and others. We had a very interesting conversation with Canvas. It kind of makes the learning management system that a lot of schools use, where we can plug Latimer right into that, and students can just use it from a drop-down menu. So we're seeing pretty rapid adoption. I think even a year ago, educational institutions were stepping back and afraid of how AI was going to impact how students learn, and there is good reason to be afraid of that. but we're seeing adoption. We're seeing people come with creative solutions.
All right. So as we close, I want to give everybody a closing thought.
Well, I will say this. For us to really get this technology right, it requires all of us to be involved in AI. There is no AI without data. We've got to ensure our data is always high quality. For us to do that, it must always be equitable. Inclusion, or the lack of inclusion, undermines accuracy in our data sets. And I will just say this. You know, I always say I was not there for the advent of the printing press. I'm here for AI. I'm glad I'm here. This is an extraordinary time for innovation. Get involved, because AI is already involved in your life.
Oh, I'll jump in. I would reiterate that, and also say that for all the problems that you see, there's kind of a flip side, which is an opportunity. So there's plenty of problems to be solved in and around AI, so plenty of opportunity as well.
I would concur with everything that has been said. We must get involved. We don't have time to waste. We cannot wait. Nobody is coming to save us. We have to get involved, do the research, find out your passion, and implement it in AI, and continue to come to events like this.
All right, I'll close with this quote. There's a great quote from the late Nipsey Hussle. He said, stay in your lane. He said, there's no traffic in your lane. Stay in your lane. So when we look at AI, there's an opportunity in the space, in the lane that you already operate in. And so you can find an opportunity to be able to change the world and put your dent in the universe. My name is Hajj. Flemings. I want to thank you for this opportunity, and I want to thank our great panel. Can we give them a hand?
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, good morning. I take my job as sort of being the midpoint introducer / speaker very seriously. So I need to hype you up, because you've had the opportunity to be a part of some really great conversations. So I'm gonna try that again. Good morning. Okay, you're awake. Well, my name is Clarinda Barnett Harrison. I am the Director of Skills at Michigan Central. I'm gonna ask you to do me a favor before I tell you a little bit more about my work. We wanna know from you what you think the most pertinent issues are as it relates to workforce development. So please scan the QR code and give us your answers. This is really critical for my body of work on behalf of Michigan Central, primarily because my team and I are charged with making certain we have equitable access points for a highly skilled, diverse workforce for the future of mobility technology. And so what that means is, whether you are an early stage professional or a lifelong learner, whether you are enrolled in our wonderful colleges or universities here in the state of Michigan, or even across the nation, or whether you're in our pre-K-12 system, we want to make certain that we have space for you here to learn and grow and be a part of what the World Economic Forum says will be 97 million new jobs globally as it relates to AI and AI-enabled technology. And that's why in the work that we're doing, we are ensuring that along that spectrum of learning and development, we're making certain that machine learning or AI is incorporated into that. And I am so proud to be a facilitator of those opportunities. In the pre-K-12 space, we're working with Detroit Public Schools Community District, creating a mobility career pathway. That means that we are in the classroom changing the way young people learn math and science so that they are better prepared for college and career. We also partner with the Office of Future Mobility and Electrification to make certain that we have a fellowship program where we're pairing recent STEM graduates in the colleges of computing around the country and making certain that they're paired with really amazing founders here at Michigan Central, where access to diverse talent is critical for their growth. And lastly, I'm most proud of the work that I'm doing to make certain that we're building talent right here in Detroit. We recently partnered with an organization called Empower, and we customized a training program whereby we are developing a curriculum for certification for junior software developers. This is for the everyday Detroiter with some level of experience in technology who wants to be a part of this industry. And it is going to create pathways for individuals within 27 weeks to be a software engineer, whereby machine learning and AI is included in that curriculum. So I am so grateful to make certain that those things happen. And I have the honor of introducing two other individuals who are also doing amazing work in the state. I'm going to call to the stage our State of Michigan Lieutenant Governor, Garlin Gilchrist. Thank you, Garlin. Please join me. And of course, I would also like to welcome University of Michigan President Santa Ono. Thank you, gentlemen. Take it away.
All right, how y'all doing? Man, they told me to be loud. Man, I guess I agreed with that. Look, it is such an amazing opportunity to be here. I want to thank the entire Michigan Central and Newlab team for amazing execution on this launch for what is the best platform and place for innovation in the entire country and the world. Can y'all please give them a hand? This is a fun moment for me because I am an alumni of the greatest university in the history of the world, the University of Michigan. And I'm proud to be here with the president of our amazing institution, Mr. Santa Ono. Thank you so much, Mr. President.
Great to be with you again. We do this several times a year, I think.
It's a thing. It's good.
Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah.
Well, you know, our conversation today, though, I am really appreciative of an opportunity to talk about something that it seems like everybody is talking about, but perhaps not in the smartest way. And that is this whole notion of artificial intelligence. What is our collective and individual relationship with it? What is the impact that it will have on our lives, on our communities, on our companies, on our economy, and on our future? And so I just thought that you and I could have an opportunity to really discuss this and maybe try to ground ourselves in what's important, ground ourselves in what our teams are doing to make sure that Michigan can be the best positioned to take full advantage of the best possibilities when it comes to artificial intelligence.
Well, I really appreciate this opportunity for us to talk about this. I think alignment is the key word. Artificial intelligence and machine learning is part of creative destruction, which will position the state of Michigan and the United States really to be globally competitive. What's happening here in Newlab and Michigan Central is nothing short than transformational, exciting, and the University of Michigan wants to partner with the state of Michigan, all the startup companies here at Newlab, and will eventually be moving into Michigan Central. We view ourselves as having a responsibility to be part of an exponential growth in GDP that can occur because of the convergence of these platforms, artificial intelligence, machine learning, but also our expertise and our ability to educate in the mobility space, but also within healthcare, biosciences, bringing together transformative technologies that have never converged to this level and in terms of numbers of transformative platforms in about 150 years. And we have the strengths here in the industry where Michigan has led, and we have world-class researchers and students at the University of Michigan. We want to be part of this ecosystem and to strategically grow it together with you, with Newlab, with Michigan Central, with Ford, other Fortune 500 companies to make sure that when exponential growth continues to occur in the multiple trillions of dollars of growth that we're already seeing, that Michiganders will benefit from that.
So let's take a step forward and make sure we are all talking about the same thing. So President Odo, I'm going to ask you to define two terms for us. First, give us your definition of the word innovation. We hear a lot of people talking about innovation. You want to be innovative. We want to welcome innovators. But I fear sometimes that word has become meaningless and become buzzy. And so how would you define innovation?
Well, I would say, I'll give you two answers. The first is to leverage these new platforms and capabilities in a way that doesn't exist today. And so if you look at that definition of innovation, it's making sure that the fundamental science that's occurring in not only University of Michigan, but the other Research One universities and community colleges here in Michigan are used to create more efficient, heretofore non-existing pathways to accelerate the economy. So it's taking that fundamental science and tethering it to new pathways of design thinking approaches that will allow individuals and companies to produce more efficiently and to have a positive impact on the economy, and also through augmenting work, potentially decrease inflation that we're all concerned about. So that's one of the definitions of innovation. The other part is, as you know, we just launched Innovate Michigan, the concept of a corridor between Ann Arbor and Detroit. And if you've been following what we've been doing over the past 2 years, the University of Michigan is committed to being the university for Michigan. And we announced at the Mackinac Policy Conference that we're going to invest over $1 billion into the innovation economy in partnership with the state. What we've been able to accomplish recently wouldn't have happened without a $100 million investment in UMCI, and also the philanthropy of Steve Ross and $50 million of our own dollars. But we're going to invest $250 million on top of that, because that has to be an economic spark plug to make sure that what we're doing here is going to be successful. And so that's a long answer to your question. Two answers to the word innovate.
Well, I appreciate both of those, and it puts into context some of the decisions that we're making. If I could offer my own definition, I want to give one that's more simple, because I think the opportunity that we have is to recognize that there is innovation that is possible in many different realms. And I think something is innovative if it simply has 5 characteristics. It's new, it's different, it's better, and it's more valuable to more people. That kind of definition makes innovation actually accessible and possible to everyone. That's important because the way that we will identify the solutions to the problems that we have and the challenges that we face, we need everyone to see themselves as a possible problem solver, as a potential entrepreneur, as a team member, as a creator, as an investor, as a disruptor. We need everyone to be able to wear those hats. And sometimes I fear that we make this a little bit too esoteric, like it's for somebody else. But I think the way that we do this in Michigan, if we are successful, everyone will feel like they have a place and a role to play in it. Now, the second thing I want to ask you to define.
Can I just chime in? I just want to
please
support what you just said.
Yeah.
AI and machine learning will only have its maximal effect if we democratize it.
Yeah.
It's not something that should just be for those people who know how to code. Everybody needs to learn how to code. And everybody needs to be able to leverage AI and ML for us to achieve what we can achieve, to reach our potential as a city, as a corridor, as a state, as a nation. The University of Michigan, the reason why we were the first university to make customized AI available to every member of faculty, staff, and students is because we're committed to democratizing that. And we want to do that beyond our campuses. The reason why we're investing in Detroit is because we're next to Cass Tech High School. Because the reason why we're investing in Marygrove College is because we want to be part of the K through 12 ecosystem and pathway so that everyone in this region can learn, that we can be part of creating curricula so it can be democratized.
I think that this notion of artificial intelligence, again, I worry that there are people who may have anxiety about like this technology future. They hear stuff about AI and they don't understand it, but like, I mean, artificial intelligence like sounds scary. And so I think we should try to ground, again, what does this mean? What are we talking about? It's a collection of technologies and techniques that can respond to either well-defined questions or ill-defined questions, whether they are prompts, whether they are realities that exist in a set of data and information. And it's using computational resources to find new and creative ways to navigate and respond and to create. I think that we have to remember, though, that that is still human-driven. One of the things that is important to how we're thinking about this technology in Michigan is we will always center people in our decisions. And so we will always center we want people to understand and have the confidence that as technology evolves, people are the ones who will drive that technology, who will shape what ultimately comes to and comes through that technology. And we have to equip folks to have the resources, the capacity, and the experiences to be able to do it. That is why investing and involving as an educational institution with people at every station in life, whether they are the youngest people in Michigan, whether they are the most experienced people in Michigan, we need to make sure everyone feels like, again, they can see themselves in this future, because that is the only way people will then be excited about that future rather than having anxiety about it. So by equipping people with the sort of skills and tactics to understand it, but also this just confidence that, you know what, I can actually manipulate that technology. I'm not afraid of what it will do to me because I know what I can do with it. And I think that simple reorientation, that empowerment spirit that I want every person in Michigan to be equipped with, I think that will help us drive and define the innovations, the inventions, the creations, the inspiration that will make Michigan a leader in this space. We have amazing entrepreneurs doing things, whether it's right here out of Newlab, one of the 100 plus companies that's domiciled here, to the AI companies that are making game-changing contributions to that sector in Grand Rapids and West Michigan. Like, we have amazing stuff happening all over this state, and our job is just to harness it.
We do, and I just, once again, I want to support what you're saying. If you look at this stage, the two of us, you've got a computer scientist and an engineer graduated from the University of Michigan to my left. Here, you have a much older immunologist that didn't know anything about computer science, data science, or AI. But I'm embracing AI. Look at me as a non-digital native that is not afraid of artificial intelligence and machine learning. And so anyone, the reason why we're making it available to all faculty, staff, and students, and soon alumni and citizens of this metropolitan area, is because we want to make it not scary. We want to make it clear that even someone like me, who's not a computer scientist, can use AI. And that's absolutely true. You know, I think some of the most exciting opportunities are the convergence of artificial intelligence and machine learning and the multi-omic approach to healthcare, whether it's CRISPR technology or whether it's oncogenomics. It's that intersection, that convergence where the opportunities lie. And that's why our Maisie and UMGPT and OpenAI and Google's involvement with us, their opportunity, their focus is on all the other sectors. And we are going to be investing in increased relationships so we have the bandwidth and computational power to be the foundation for all of these innovations that should take place in the state of Michigan. So I couldn't agree more with you, Garlin.
He's basically saying that y'all are going to have to pay OpenAI or somebody else to use their model. You just get it from University of Michigan. That's what I heard. So in order to make this real and accessible, we should think about on-ramps. Like, how do people, when they want to get started, they want to dip their toe in, they want to try something, like how should people approach that? And one of the questions that we got, and I hope people are submitting their questions using the QR code, et cetera, was about if you are a student who was in high school and you want to dip your toe in, like, how do you start? I actually think we shouldn't overthink the response to that question. The way to get started is to start. The way to get started is to try. There are, they might range in quality, but there are any number of sites that you can go to today and just begin interacting with a large language model. To begin working with one of these chatbots and just literally put it in. Put your own name in and see what happens. And I'm gonna tell you, there were some interesting hallucinations about me in ChatGPT 3.5, okay? Y'all can enjoy it if you want. But I think getting over the hump of hesitation and just saying, okay, I'm gonna try this thing out. Recognizing that it is safe to put something in the box that's not personally identifiable, but just say, hey, what if I ask this thing a crazy question? What if I ask this thing to write something and see what it does? You might be surprised. It might be better than what you come up with. It might be laughably worse. But I want people to have the confidence, and I think that's especially true for students who sometimes don't have the jaded cynicism of adulthood, to be willing to give something a chance and give something a try. So I just encourage students to go straight up, whether it's go to one of these resources that the University of Michigan will make available soon, or just go to Anthropic and check out Claude, go to Google and check out Gemini, go to OpenAI.com and check out ChatGPT, or ChatGPT.com, excuse me. Give these things a shot. They work better when you understand them better, and you only understand something with that experience.
Let me chime in and say once again, you're absolutely right. And if you think about the early days of personal computers or gaming, they were young kids who were involved. You even think about Doug Song and Duo. He was a young person, and he went to try to find the people who were trying to hack into Duo, and he found the young kids. And they were the ones who had the out-of-the-box thinking to really innovate. And so you're absolutely right. It's the kids that will actually be the innovators of the future, and we have to draw them in. And it's for that reason that we're here. That's why we want to be near Castech. That's why we want to do more in Detroit, because those kids are not just going to be experimenting. They're going to be the ones that are saying, you're doing it wrong, old folk. You got to think about this different angle. Remember when the most exciting game was Pong, which was 2 paddles and one ping pong ball going back and forth. The youngsters came in and said, this is boring. We got to do things a different way. So the University of Michigan is going to be, and all the other schools, are going to really double down. We're talking about what we can do here in Newlab. We're talking about what we can do in Michigan Central. We want to be part of the ecosystem, reaching into the schools, bringing in the talent from Detroit, because they are the innovators of the future. It's not us.
All right, so I have another question that came in that I think is important and also instructive. So the question is, what are the AI priorities for the state of Michigan? Meaning, like, what are the things that we think AI is most important for? I want to reframe that a little bit, because I actually think we should be asking what are the priorities for the state of Michigan and how AI can contribute to us achieving those, or advancing those priorities. And our priorities are really clear. On a basic level, our job is to provide every person in Michigan with access to a dream of health and wealth. Like, that's our job. It's something everyone has in common in terms of what we want and what we strive for, and something that we can, through good government and great partnership, can create the conditions for that to be possible. But then we also have solutions that we need to address in specific realms. Michigan will be stronger in our response to the climate crisis if we are able to take full advantage of artificial intelligence. Michigan will have a clearer pathway to improving the quality of life for Michiganders by raising household incomes and by increasing our educational attainment and finding better jobs by fully embracing and taking advantage of everything that artificial intelligence can offer at its best. We can improve educational outcomes. We can find new solutions to housing. We can improve health outcomes by being a leader when it comes to identifying new treatments, new cures, identifying new conditions that we didn't know what the cause was to understand how to deal with them. Like, these are the priorities for the state of Michigan, and it's our job as users to use the tools that are available to us today that were not available to us yesterday, last year, or a decade ago to get to the solutions faster.
So in 50 seconds, I'm going to say that the way we're going to do this is really come together strategically and develop a plan. Garlin, you were there with me when I was talking to folks in Newlab, Michigan Central. The industry roundtable here is going to have to get together with the universities, the startups, and identify the areas of focus. But the other part, which is already starting to happen, is we need to respond to the talent needs for the companies that are already here. So in the last 19 seconds, I'm saying I'm optimistic because we're aligning like never before here in the state of Michigan. Business leaders of Michigan, the Detroit Regional Chamber, universities, state government, we're coming together. So I'm pumped. That's my last word.
I just want to leave everyone with something that President Ono said at his inaugural address to the University of Michigan when he came in as president. And he said something, he just reiterated something when that there. He said that we must connect like never before. The only way that we will achieve what we need to achieve is if everyone plays a role and is better connected to do it stronger, to do it better, to do it faster. And if we connect like never before, we'll be able to get it done. Thank you very much, sir.
Thanks a lot, everybody.
Thank you so much to Lieutenant Governor Gilchrist and President Ono. What a really inspiring discussion on the role leading education institutions are playing in preparing future generations for an intelligent world, and the role of city and state officials to use these technologies to, quote, create jobs, not destroy them, to build a future that works for all people, not just some. My name is Will Foss, and for the last 15 years, I have been an advisor, investor, and builder in AI-first companies. I'm an advisor to Michigan Central on its AI strategy, and I am extremely excited for the opportunity to build on the progress, not just of these last 2 days, but of the last 6 years of framing this innovation district. In my career, I have had the opportunity to invest in AI companies at SoftBank. I've also had the opportunity to build an AI-first venture firm called Actuator Capital, which we're building right now, to sit on the board of intelligent robotics leaders like Boston Dynamics, Fetch Robotics, Paladine AI, and more, to advise some of the world's leading AI researchers at the AI Institute in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and to advise MIT spinouts that are developing technology to reduce bias and uncertainty in model outputs and to save lives on roadways. When I first started working in AI, the 2 VCs I knew told me not to focus on it because, quote, those are science experiments and they'll never make any money. Today we've seen how short-sighted that view was, but also how limited that view is. AI is a technological shift that requires a diverse group to drive it forward, from city and state officials to corporations and users of those technologies, to researchers and entrepreneurs developing the future generations of these advanced technologies. These last 2 days show what can happen with the right partnerships literally transforming, or more accurately, restoring our community. Now we're asking questions like, how does Michigan become the destination for AI researchers that want to develop technology that can transform whole industries. How do we ensure that models and their outputs can be both reliable and equitable? How do we leverage the assets of the region here, the 3 leading research universities, direct access airport to the entire world, a leading role in the built world in developing buildings and communities, a leading role in healthcare systems that adopt technology to save lives, the largest install base of robotics and embodied intelligence in the nation, and more. If we're going to be successful in building on the great progress showcased over the last 2 days, to answer these questions and to build in a robust innovation district where AI technologies can not only be theorized, but where the impacts of those technologies can be realized to transform industries and lives, we're going to continue to need all of these stakeholders at the table. We're going to need everyone in this room, all of you, at that table. Our next guest is particularly relevant in understanding the realization of advanced technology, having overseen DARPA and now the U.S. Office of Science and Technology Policy. We hope this conversation will help us understand AI from yet another critical viewpoint, that of federal policymakers. This is critical in both the opportunity to address some of our biggest challenges, everything from health to education to decarbonizing our economy to predicting the weather and so much more, but also the very real questions around the role of regulation and controls on these technologies to, quote, get it right. I'm honored to introduce Dr. Arati Prabhakar, President Biden's Chief Advisor on Science and Technology and Director of the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy. She personally showed President Biden ChatGPT in March of 2023. She'll be in conversation with NPR technology correspondent Bobby Allyn. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Prabhakar and Bobby.
Hi, everyone.
Hello. So that's now your go-to. You showed President Biden ChatGPT. Do you want that to be your bio line?
Is that going to go on the tombstone? I don't know. That sounds a little scary.
So AI is moving at warp speed. Everyone knows ChatGPT, but what's a breakthrough innovation that maybe people aren't talking about and you find pretty impressive?
Well, everyone is talking about image generators and chatbots. And part of what that's done is it's brought AI, it's in our faces now. But we were already in an AI-enabled world, for better and for worse. And so, like, if you look back, of course, every time an ad's served up to you, that's AI. The thing you might not have been thinking about is when you go to the ER, what kind of treatment you get. That's often it's AI. Whether your mortgage application gets accepted or not, AI. So it's been hidden. And I think there's a lot to wrangle and deal with to make sure we get that right. And that's the work that the president and the vice president have really focused in on. And then, if you look forward, what I'm really excited about is if we can get it right, we have to get it right. We have to protect people and make sure it's reinforcing our values, not eroding our values. But once we do that, I think the prospects ahead for doing the country's work, that's another thing that I'm very excited about. And that some of that will be ChatGPT and other chatbots and image generators, but there's so much more AI can do.
And so right now on the federal level, there are no AI regulations. Some states are acting. Do you think that is a problem, that right now there's no regulatory framework? I mean, these companies are governing themselves. I mean, the White House and Congress are discussing policy, but I mean, right now there really are no federal guardrails for these really powerful AI companies.
Let's talk about where we are. Number one, the president has been really clear that we need legislation. He's called on Congress to act on privacy, on protecting our kids, on dealing with AI harms broadly. And Congress is doing a lot of work towards that. We're not there, and that has to happen. It's been important to see Congress's progress on a bipartisan basis. We'll keep working with them. But the president was also clear that we're not going to just sit and wait. And so the actions that he has taken, actually, we're making some real progress. And it's happening, AI is so broad that and I think it needs to be dealt with in one application area after another. So I'll just give you a couple of examples. Today, when you go to the emergency room, then whatever algorithm is being used to decide what your treatment is has to be transparent, has to be non-discriminatory. I mean, think about this. These were algorithms these were AI systems that are actually trained on how previously people were treated when they came in the door. And that means if you had more money to spend on taking care of your health, then the person who comes in with a higher income, the next person who comes in, is going to get better treatment. That's just not right. And it was along racial lines. So these are real issues that's an example. We're dealing with that through the regulatory structure that we have. Similarly, if you go to your bank, you apply for credit today. Now there are regulations in place that when an AI algorithm says you don't get, your credit application's denied, that you get an application. The fact that they're using AI doesn't mean they're off the hook from explaining it to you. So we are making progress, and there is absolutely a lot more that has to get done.
So with most areas of technology policy, the EU is far ahead of us, right? Before we get to the AI Act, I'm just curious to ask you why you might think that is. I was talking to an analyst recently who said, the reason why European regulators can speed ahead and pass laws that regulate Silicon Valley is because their economy isn't beholden to these multi-trillion-dollar companies, and maybe because of that, they're not as worried about stifling innovation or hurting these companies in the same way. Is there anything to that theory? And if not, why is Europe just so far ahead of the game when it comes to tech regs?
I think there's a lot to dig into on this issue. And the place I think to start, though, is to say that when we look around the world, we actually share a lot of values with many of the countries in the EU. And so they have been an important partner for so many things in global affairs, including how we think about these advanced technologies. So we actually have more in common, I think, than where we disagree. But it is also the case that Europe tends to be much more driven by a precautionary principle. That I think has, and I, when I talk to my European counterparts, they worry about the fact that they don't have the leading edge innovation-driven industries and the benefits that come from that. So I think these are some of the things that every country around the world is grappling with. And again, I don't think it's quite as black and white. And we can get to the EU Act. That's something that is a huge piece of legislation. They've made important progress. It doesn't actually take effect for another few years. And while that's happening, some of these very specific examples, our existing laws, our existing regulatory structure is able to move out. So I think it's not quite as black and white.
Yeah, but the AI Act in Europe, I mean, it defines these high-risk systems. It's looking at infrastructure, transportation, healthcare, law enforcement, and sets transparency and data security standards and penalties for non-compliance. Is there anything the U.S. can learn from the AI Act?
Yeah, I think it's a very important exchange of views, and in fact, that exchange shaped, in part, the way the EU AI Act landed. If you remember, they started drafting it long before generative AI burst on the scene, and by the time they got to actually passing it, we had done our work, which made us a better partner, and I think did allow for a degree of harmonization. So yeah, I mean, I think we are each learning from each other, and we'll get there. We're making progress. But again, I think each system has its own advantages and disadvantages.
So I want to ask you about something that is part of your specialty, semiconductor chips. We were just talking before this about, some people might not know this, but something like 90% of the most advanced silicon chips that are powering AI are basically coming from one company, TSMC, in Taiwan, right? A technologist put it to me recently that everyone's excited about generative AI, but all generative AI really is linear algebra coded onto silicon chips, right?
At a staggering scale, we should say.
Yeah. But the CHIPS Act is at $50 billion. Of federal support will now be infused into trying to nationalize some of the chip production. Talk about the semiconductor issue and how important it is that the U.S. is not as reliant on Taiwan as we are now. Obviously, that's a geopolitically sort of risky situation there. Can you discuss that?
Yeah, absolutely. This is one of my favorite topics. If we'd all known each other 40 years ago, I was hunched over typing out my PhD thesis, which was on semiconductor materials. And back then, my generation, we were so excited about all the things that semiconductors were going to be able to do. And they did. I mean, they completely pervade our lives. They're the foundation of the information age. I spent a slice of my life in the national security world. You don't have national security without the advances that semiconductors bring. So there was a lot of good news, but the bad news was that in those 40 years, this industry that started in the U.S., I mean, the original invention, the original industry, all the manufacturing started right here in the United States. It globalized, that's fine, and then it got dangerously concentrated in one part of the world that has tsunamis, earthquakes, and is the center of a lot of geopolitical tensions now. And I watched for 4 decades while we admired the problem and didn't do anything about it. President Biden got it done with the CHIPS and Science Act, working with Congress on a bipartisan basis. And it's the first time that this country has put a stake in the ground and said, we need semiconductors made in America at the leading edge because it's important for our supply chains, it's important for jobs in this industry, but all the other industries. The automotive industry shuts down when it can't get chips during a pandemic. So it has huge spillovers, and it matters for national security. And all of that links directly to AI because AI is pervasive for all of those purposes. And this powerful technology that American companies have driven in the last couple of years is built on a foundation that does have this critical vulnerability. So that's what's getting fixed now with the president's leadership.
So everyone's talking about the risks of AI. Some people like talking about existential risks, which are very theoretical. You know, killer robots roaming around cities and at war with humanity, which is more sci-fi than anything else. But there are real dangers, present, urgent dangers that we're seeing unfold every single day when it comes to disinformation being supercharged or, impersonations. There's a lot of other sort of consequences of AI that people are grappling with, that society is grappling with. What do you see as the most present dangers, and how should they be handled from a regulatory perspective?
I think this gets to the heart of what's complex about AI. Let me back up one step. Think about what's going on. These AI systems that we're talking about, today's AI, machine learning generation of AI, what this is computer systems that people train on a bunch of data and then they use to make statistical predictions about things, which doesn't sound that exciting, but it's astonishing what you can do with these things. Okay, but so here we are in the information age, and that means that there are so many different kinds of data to train an AI model on. Right now we're talking about language models and image generators, so that's trained on text that we write and on images and on video. But of course, we can also train AI models on scientific data, on sensor data, administrative data, health data. Of course, on the online environment, every click that you make is training an AI model somewhere. So I think first we have to just recognize how incredibly broad it is. And that means that while its applications are broad, it means the implications are really broad. And so the risks, and I think people, everyone tends to focus in on the one that they're the most concerned about. But from where we sit at the White House, we're the United States of America. We have to wrangle all of the risks. And so we think about it very broadly. We understand that we have to get a handle on the risks to the integrity of our information environment, that we have to deal with safety risks because there are real safety risks, including cybersecurity and biosecurity, for example. Then there are risks of just embedding discrimination at scale. There are risks of privacy exposure. There are risks to people's jobs. So the list is very, very long and very, very broad. And that is why when the president signed his executive order on AI last October, it's a bulky, it's like over 100 pages. It's a gigantic document because it is literally pulling every lever we could find across government for all of these different kinds of risks. And my view is we just have to be aggressive and serious about identifying and going after these risks, and at the same time be aggressive and serious about using AI to do big things for the country. So that all of those are what we work on every day.
And following up on that, is it the White House's view that AI can lead to mass job displacement? In what sectors are the most vulnerable, and again, what can be done?
Yeah, so the first thing that I think really got everyone's attention is that when ChatGPT, the other chatbots and image generators came along, all of a sudden the jobs that we had been saying for decades were immune to automation creative jobs, all of a sudden it looked like these systems could really have an impact on those kinds of jobs. And a bunch of professions, creative professions, including journalism, including the practice of law, so many different areas where all of a sudden people were reevaluating their assumptions. And I think there's still a lot of sorting out to be done about that. But I think we already know that it is affecting many, many, many more kinds of professions. So the question for all of us is, we could have a future, we could have a great future in which AI actually enables people to do more and earn more. That's exactly what we want. When you hear rosy economists' projections about productivity enhancement, that's pretty exciting. But I think we also understand that today AI is actually, often it's being used to surveil workers in ways that really dehumanize jobs. It can hollow out work and it can replace workers. And we have some very deliberate choices to make about which of those futures we're going to navigate to. And again, this is something that's very much in focus in the work we're doing at the White House.
So before being in the federal government, you spent a lot of time in Silicon Valley, where most of the AI research is happening. Companies are pumping now billions of dollars into AI R&D. What's government's role in supporting AI development?
Well, first of all, it is a vibrant area of investment for companies and investors. What we care about is they have got to make sure it's safe and that we protect people. But we want to see the advances that the market's going to provide. The thing I spent a lot of time thinking about as well, so number one, our job is to make sure we protect people and get AI on the right track. Number two, the reason you build a stable platform is so you can reach for the stars. And if we can get AI right, we need it to do the country's work. And by that, I mean, how do we boost American health outcomes by, for example, changing public health and changing how fast we can design new drugs for hard diseases. There's amazing advances that are happening in AI for weather prediction. And in a changing climate, that becomes even more important than ever. The government delivers critical services to Americans that we know we can do that far better by using AI if we can get privacy right. So it's a very long list of public missions that I see tremendous opportunity if we can get the foundation right.
So how can local communities lean into policy and advocacy to support national AI priorities?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And you know what, AI is happening at every level. And so first, sticking with government for a minute, it's not just the federal government that's in the throes of figuring out how to use AI, but wisely and responsibly. We've done a lot of work at the federal level. The Office of Management and Budget just put out guidance that goes across all of federal agencies that tells them the fact that they have to make sure, for example, that an AI model that they're using for any purpose, they have to make sure it's not embedding discrimination, that it's protecting privacy. They have to test it before they deploy it. They have to keep testing it after they deploy it. And with those kinds of measures and practices that we're developing as we're building our muscle, I think they're, at the state and local level, I hope that what we're able to do at the federal level can be helpful for the things that people put in place. I think AI is an important tool for communities and citizens as well. And I think there's a lot to be done. I think people need to stand up and argue for protecting all of us against the harms. But again, to use this tool to shine a light on where there are problems and to bring data and analysis to help change decisions so that we can keep building the vibrant communities that we all want to live in.
I mean, when it comes to AI deepfakes, we're seeing all sorts of use cases that are pretty alarming. I mean, maybe if you Google deep enough, there'll be a deep fake of you saying something you didn't say, which would be pretty troubling, right? How does the government, combat and prevent deep fakes at scale? Is it possible? I mean, I know from, covering social media so much, the First Amendment obviously is amazing, but gets in the way from a regulatory perspective of ever having real EU-like guardrails around something like hate speech. Similarly, when it comes to, trying to prevent the widespread dissemination of deepfakes, it's, from a legal perspective, quite challenging. But is there anything the federal government can do?
Yeah, thank you for talking about freedom of speech, because that is one of our bedrock values in this country that is challenging in this environment. But the fact still very much remains that we need to wrestle with this. Look, I think everyone's been very clear from the beginning when the first time you saw a chatbot generate this stream of text after you put a prompt in, the immediate next thought is, well, how is this going to spew bad information out into the environment? So that is happening. I'll note that we're pretty sure that the first place that that's manifesting a real acceleration of harms, not just risks, is actually in online degradation, especially of women and girls and gay folks, right? And this is about using intimate imagery, either taking intimate imagery and using it in non-consensual ways, which has been going on before, but now it is so trivially easy from hundreds and hundreds of websites to generate a deep fake nude. We've seen it happen to Taylor Swift, and we know it's happening especially to women and girls.
Dozens of states are moving to criminalize.
And while that is happening, so absolutely that's an area where legislation is needed, but that's also an area, as an example, one of the actions we took working from OSTP at the White House, my organization, we worked with our Gender Policy Council to call on companies to step up to this. And there's a lot, payment processors, for example, can have in their terms of service that they won't support the websites where their main job is generating deepfake nudes that end up getting used in these degrading ways. Sometimes people have it in their terms of service and they're just not enforcing it. So we need action now, and we're calling on companies to do that, and at the same time working towards regulation that could help with some of these problems.
So I want to do sort of a counterfactual. Imagine OpenAI CEO Sam Altman comes to the White House and says, hey, we have this thing called ChatGPT. We're going to release it in 12 months, but we want some regulatory framework, some laws before it is publicly released. What would you guys do?
Sam Altman did come to the White House and show us ChatGPT, but not 12 months before it got released. First of all, I'll tell you, the timing, I think, was really interesting. I started in this job for the president in October of 2022. I showed up in October, ChatGPT showed up in November, so guess what happened to my first year in this job? But in the second day I was on the job in October, the White House released an AI Bill of Rights. It's a blueprint for an AI Bill of Rights, and what it did was actually critically important to do before generative AI burst on the scene, because what it did was it put a stake in the ground about what are American values that matter as we are wrangling with these very, very powerful technologies. And it said, look, we care about safety and security. We can't have discrimination. We value privacy. We care about the impact on workers. And that document really has become the light by which we are steering, as the president and vice president have taken all of the actions that they have taken, which include voluntary commitments with companies, all the things we're doing across government, working with allies, working with Congress. And, I think it's, steering by your values is always important, but when you're in choppy waters with a technology that's moving this fast, that becomes even more important. So that's something we did do before all of this happened that I think has been extremely helpful.
So you're really in touch with cutting-edge AI researchers, and you know probably better than most how far along this technology is and how far along it could still advance. When we talk about ChatGPT, large language models, that's one use of this technology, but also this idea of AGI, artificial general intelligence, to have this like supercomputer that, is just as or smarter than humanity, right? How close are we to this idea of AGI? Is it ever going to happen? Are things happening secretly in labs that maybe you have seen and you thought, wow, like this almost seems like it's sentient? What do you make of that? Because obviously AI will keep advancing for many more years, but this idea of a super intelligent computer is something that raises a lot of fears, but others say it's always going to be theoretical. We're never going to be there. What do you think?
I have spent a lot of time with artificial intelligence as a technology. A decade ago, I was running DARPA in the Defense Department, and long before generative AI burst on the scene, it was all AI, machine learning-based AI was in so many things that we were doing. That really helped me get a deep sense of what the technology is. And I'll tell you, I hear these conversations. I have to say I frequently feel like I have stumbled into a freshman dorm room at 2 in the morning. And I actually think, I mean, kidding aside, I think when we talk about machines having intelligence, I actually think we are reflecting on what human intelligence is all about. And we don't fully understand what that is. We all have different conceptualizations of that. And at every step when machines have done something that surprised us, which is, the first time a machine outperformed me was a calculator when I was in high school, right? So like this is a long trajectory of machines doing more and more. And every time it's surprising because we didn't think they were going to do it, and then they do it. And then it becomes ordinary. The things we called AI a decade ago, we don't call AI anymore. We just, that's how our logistics systems run on expert systems. We don't think of that as AI. So my view is that AI technologies will continue to get more and more capable. The thing I think we all need to be keeping an eye on, we spend a lot of time talking about the technology. The way the world unfolds is about human choices. And it's human beings who are building these things. They're deciding what to train them on. They're deciding where to use them. They're deciding what action to connect them to. I want to make sure we keep our eye on the ball because it's human beings are the ones that really drive this.
What's the best way to future-proof yourself these days? If you're someone who wants to avoid AI redundancy, depends on the sector, depends on your occupation, but are there any broad principles?
Well, I think all of us as consumers first just need to be aware of the fact that AI is in our lives in so many ways and be savvy consumers. And you can see this generationally. My daughters are, I found even when they were young teenagers, they were very savvy consumers in the online environment because they'd been conditioned to it. So I think that is something that people are getting better at. I hope we don't lose our ability to trust each other as a consequence of putting our defenses up. But I think that number one is just being aware. And then, really find ways to use this technology that lets you do what you really want to contribute to the world. I think that can be, rather than being on the defensive, I'd like to see us lean forward and, grab this technology and make it go where we think it needs to go.
Are you using ChatGPT or any other AI in your day-to-day life in the White House?
Within government at the White House, I would tell you we look like any other responsible organization where we're, A, trying to make sure we protect the information that might still be confidential that we're putting into a prompt box, and B, we care a lot about the quality of the information that comes back. So when I talk to people at large corporations, these are the same things that they're wrestling with. I will tell you that I and most people I know are definitely experimenting with it and playing with it on their personal time because I think that's important.
And so when it comes to next steps, so we want to know when is there going to be some kind of regulatory framework for AI? We'll see what happens in Congress, but what should we be looking out for in terms of from an advisory standpoint from the White House in the coming months?
We're doing a lot of work to execute on the president's executive order. An executive order says under existing law, here's what all the departments and agencies need to go do. And the president gave the departments and agencies a boatload of hard homework last October. They're stepping up. It's really exciting to see that they're not just sort of like dealing with it from the White House, they're embracing it. But there's a lot more work to be done on implementing that. And then the part of the orchestra that we've been working to bring up from my organization at the White House is this question of, once you get AI on the right track, then how do you use it to go big and do the country's work? And so next week we're going to have the launch of something we're calling AI Aspirations. We're going to talk about how you use AI to create better weather forecasts. How do you finally realize the promise of technology for K through 12 education? How do we deliver government services in a better way? Can we just completely collapse the decades that it takes to develop new drugs? All of those things are, they're just barely becoming feasible, and it's a boatload of work, but if we can do them, it starts changing lives for people, and that's the point of the exercise. So we need to get on with that too.
I think we're just about out of time, but thanks for doing this chat. It was really fun.
Great to be here. Congrats to Detroit.
Hi, everybody. I'm Josh Sirefman from Michigan Central. I'm going to take 5 seconds before you're liberated for lunch. And hopefully you will go tour the station at 2 o'clock. I do think, I'm not sure there's anywhere else in the world within 24 hours or less you get Diana Ross and the incredible group of panelists today, but that's the essence of what we're trying to accomplish here at Michigan Central. Ask the hard questions, make sure we have a big tent and that we're really thinking about issues and the complexity and not shying away from anything. So much to be done with AI, so much for Detroit, for Michigan, to be positioning itself as a leader of really how do we understand how to leverage it. Thank you all in here for your time and attention. Thank you all out there for listening already, lunching and networking. And please, today is day one of an open house. We have 65,000 people over the next 7 days coming into the station. I hope you'll enjoy it. It's just the start of what can happen here. So thank you. Really appreciate it. Thank you to all of our participants and enjoy the tour.
I'm standing on the nation's first wireless charging road. Now, this is just one of the many innovations here at Michigan Central.
And then becomes there.
Let's go check it out. What you got going on over here?
We've created a solar-powered mobile grocery store that costs almost nothing to run and allows us to get really affordable, fresh produce into communities that need it.
We're using robots to move goods in tubes.
We have the first and only autonomous wheel in the world. Imagine pushing this day in, day out.
Helping 1 million backs.
You're addressing issues of safety.
Police and fire, first response. To get a drone on site is so much faster. Lives are already being saved.
You're contributing to the wellness of the community.
Our goal is to attract the best talent, the best startups here at Michigan Central. What is happening here is happening nowhere else.
This has been like a huge accelerant where instead of following the rest of the country, we can actually lead the country. Not only in Detroit, but everywhere we implement this.
Just like Henry Ford 100 years ago was building the supply chain for automotive, we're building these for smaller electric mobility.
Why do this in Detroit?
It really has all the ingredients necessary for these companies to really build out the next transportation revolution.